I'm Hannah.
And I'm David.
Welcome to PvM Perspective, a podcast about getting the most out of RuneScape PvM. Today is a very special episode where we are going to be talking about mining and smithing and the future of skilling as it relates to PvM. We have two special guests. First of all, we have Alice. You may have heard us together on our Ladies' Night episode, and she's joining us here. How are you doing, Alice?
Doing just fine. Thanks for having me on, and I'm excited to talk about our topics.
Awesome. And also, we have MageBit joining us for another skiller perspective. Kind of the reason we have these two guests is David and I are big PvMers. MageBit and Alice do some PvM, but not as much as us. So how are you doing, Mage?
Greetings. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to spread the skilling agenda.
That's definitely a goal of the show today. It's I think a little bit more happier of a time than when I started writing this document. Before they did a lot of changes, but we will get into that as the show goes on. So I have quite a big document. I think we have 4 pages of show notes or something like that, so this is going to be a fun thing to get through, but we'll just start it off with part 1, what's wrong with skilling? I should say, to kind of start this off, I wrote these show notes, so it is a lot of my opinions here. We will find out whether or not our guests agree with me as the show goes on, of course. But yeah, so that's kind of the agenda. I tried to give an outline of what I thought was wrong with skilling as far as it relates to mining and smithing and really just the game in general. So first bullet point here. Skilling updates are mostly about experience. We need skilling updates that are about making money. Examples of the issue with experience, I think some of the biggest ones are waterfall fishing and the Ark. Secondarily to that, I would list Menopause and Prif. Menopause is a bit strange. It's a mid-level update, so that you can argue that maybe money shouldn't be made there, and there also is stuff like Shifting Tombs and Menopause where you can make money, so it's a bit better than something like the Ark, and Prif is the same way, where it's, thieving in Prif is actually an okay way to make money. Anyways, what are anybody have any thoughts on that point?
I could definitely jump in here. Oh, go ahead, David.
I just, for MageBit, and I'm not sure who has played this update, but I've heard some pretty good feedback about the recent Crystal Skill Champa update, both as a balance of money and XP. I know that it's been so popular that those haven't sold for very much, but yeah. Is that in the direction of things that y'all would be interested in, or is that still not enough, or what do you think? Because it seems like they could potentially make a lot of updates in those lines, especially given how popular it's been and how good the reception has been.
Hunter is high on my list of 120s because of its potential in money-making, although when you look at it from the Crystal Chinchampa's perspective, the money-making actually is pretty poor. Though the Hunter skill can be accomplished quite quickly, you'd only make a few 100 million if you did the Chinchampa method, which, in my opinion, is still a fairly active method. So, as Hunter is generally a skill that provides a pretty good chunk of change in any other method, I'm a little dissuaded to do Crystal Chins for that specific reason. But of course, that also kind of boils more down to playtime, or not playtime, but style, I guess. There has to be a certain level of money in it for me. I don't know. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that? I also haven't tried the Chinchampa method, meaning I just assumed it was box traps. Is there any special mechanics that I should know about before, or that might change my opinion?
It's box traps, super high XP, plus you get plus agility factors into your ability to catch them or something like that, which is kind of a new mechanic. Thing.
Yeah, that I would love to see more of, because agility is another skill that they don't, for whatever reason, want to attribute to combat, but also they throw their hands up as to what to do with it, so that makes me happy right there.
I'm really happy about the agility aspect of that too, just because
any reason to train agility, right?
Well, yeah, and then just I don't know, agility is kind of a weird skill in that
it is stuck in this nebulous place where it's what do you do with it if it can't be combat? So I guess I appreciate that, and I think we should definitely take away from that update that hey, this is a positive move for the agility skill. Let's try to incorporate this into more skills that produce items for skillers. Because at that point, if you're a high level player, you're going to get more goods. And I think that is a good mechanic indicatively that should be looked at in this scenario is, your higher level skill should produce more items akin to like double nats and things like that. That I think is a positive, thing in the way of the evolution of skilling, quote unquote. Yeah, go ahead.
I definitely agree on some level. Like I think I haven't done Crystal Chins either because I'm not level for that. But I think that is definitely one good way to do updates. Another I think thing that we were kind of get into later in the document a bit more is I would also like to see things that take more time though, because the biggest thing about Crystal Chins is kind of what you listed right away, David, is that you can get so many of them that they don't actually make that much and probably never will because of stuff like that. Whereas if they were if it took like an hour to catch 10 or something like that, and so you were catching very few and they sold for more because of that, that would be interesting. So you're still earning good XP while doing that, but maybe they just die or get destroyed by your trap or something like that, so that there's fewer coming into the game, and would have a reward of something like agility allowing you to catch more of them. Because I totally agree, that's one of my favorite things about that update is that but that is definitely a step in the right direction, and it's a good way to round out the skill. Yeah. I also think we'll move on to kind of the second part here. Many skills are neglected, and the longer you wait, the worse it's going to get. I think two great examples of this. I mean, basically every gathering skill in the game could be listed here, but two of the biggest ones I listed were summoning and construction. Well, and I listed summoning, whereas summoning is, of course, still a very useful skill, but also it's kind of on a point where a lot of its familiars have become useless. Like you look at stuff like the beaver, which is a woodcutting familiar that boosts your woodcutting by 2 and is supposed to act as a knife for fletching. Who needs a knife for fletching anymore? Yeah. And that's part of the summoning skill, and it's like if Jagex would take the time and rebalance that stuff now, then summoning, won't ever get to the point where mine and smithing currently is, or construction currently is, where construction's all but useless. And so if Jagex were to take a proactive approach to updating skills, it would be much healthier for the game.
And Hannah, do you feel the approach should be new niche uses that are actually something that can be utilized by skillers, or do you think the like Lava Titan and Arctic Bear approach of just giving like a massive boost to Hunter and Smithing? I think it's like +9 and +11. It's really significant. Do you think that maybe some of those familiars should be updated, or high level familiars should come out that just give these huge hidden boosts to skills?
Hidden boosts, I don't know. I mean, that's okay, but it's like, especially as far as the beaver goes, to me, what I would do there is repurpose that and make it like, we don't currently have any familiars that allow you to fletch endlessly with a familiar out. Like if you have a pack yak or whatever out and you have logs in it, you can't fletch from that. So what I would do for stuff like making skills, even smithing, I don't think smithing can work from a familiar either. So what I would do with a lot of these familiars that have become useless is I would make it so that you could use turn them basically into beast of burdens specific to that skill, and make it so that you can use those items like it's part of it's an extension of your backpack, basically. I'm
all for that. I always find it annoying when you can store things in a familiar but can't act upon them while they're there.
Yeah, and especially because like runecrafting has familiars like that allow you to carry extra runes specifically designed for runecrafting. So I think that, to me, that's the easiest solution for this. Yeah. I don't know. I guess invisible boost, they do technically speed you up some, but I don't think they're popular enough on their own to be a huge deal. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Mage? You use a lot of the invisible boost familiars.
Here's a problem that I run into way too often, and I know it's going to be corrected in the future, so my points kind of become moot, but I'll mention it anyway. Is I find I constantly, as someone who is a clan warden, I constantly am fighting with, is it worth it to even have a summoning familiar or the avatar? And like 9 out of 10 times, it's better to have the avatar, and I think that speaks volumes about the summoning skill. Like,
Yeah.
most of the perks are completely useless compared to a 6% XP boost. So I think we need to look at that a little bit and just why can't these have more niche uses? I think niche would be the better way to go. Is, one familiar is great for whatever X task. That's so I guess what my opinion would be is buff niche uses, yes. Give me a reason to not pull an avatar. Also, I know avatars are going away, but at the same time, still give me a reason to want this familiar over, not having a familiar at all, I guess. I don't know. Like, give me a reason to want to keep this thing summoned.
As far as avatars going away, we also have no actual end date on that, right? The last time it was talked about was like 6 months ago.
Yeah, when I say avatars are going away, it could be in 5 years.
Yeah, that's still kind of pie in the sky. And I agree with niche, although to me niche means can be used in one skill, not like niche like the skill cape perks are, where they're only useful at like one part of the skill. Like I want to, like I said, allow the fletching familiars to be used as holding fletching resources. Do you have any thoughts on that, Alice?
Yeah, I just want to echo what you were saying. That's probably the best idea I've heard up so far, and just make it great for the whole skill, and even if you have to make use of like the lower mid tier familiars, because I know there's 3 rune essence holding familiars, correct?
Yeah.
So I would say make a low tier, mid tier, and a high tier, and different ones can be better with each tier within the entirety of the skill, not just like when you're doing, soft clay or something like that.
All right. And the next point I have here is Treasure Hunter is not a solution for skills that suck to train. I think the biggest outlier or biggest offender we have here is Silverhawk boots. People hate to train agility, and Jagex has not addressed this, and it almost feels like part of that reason is because they did address it with Silverhawk boots, but considering Silverhawk boots are not earnable in-game, it's not actually a solution to the problem. Treasure Hunter is supposed to augment the game, not be the end-all, be-all.
Should not be your main training method, for sure.
Yeah. And the other issue, of course, is portables. Portables are great in some ways, but kind of shitty in others. It actually kind of leads into the next point I have here, which is that the skilling community is not spread out enough. We are grouped up, whether it's being in Prifdnis or whether it's being at portables. And I think that's part of why people think the worlds are dead, is because people, like you look at old school RuneScape, people spread out. People go to the furnace to smith, they go to an anvil or go to a furnace to smelt, they go to an anvil to smith, they do all that kind of stuff. They fletch from the bank, whereas like almost every skill in the game you do at a portable in RS3 now, and that very much basically reduces the majority of the community to be in Lumbridge, basically, or in Priv.
World 100 Shanty Pass for life? No.
What?
I've been here. Go ahead, sorry.
What is the solution to this, though? Is it to nerf portables? Because they're so overpowered that it's hard to imagine a scenario where something becomes better than portables that isn't just like power creep for skilling. Does it make sense to say power creep for skilling? What term would you use? I don't know.
I just want to first say like having or trying to argue for the nerfing of any promotional item is you're just wasting your breath. You got to take a completely different direction on it. But Hannah, did you want to take that reign, or do you want me to keep talking here?
I mean, if they could do something where I honestly don't know what you do here, because I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot much with Silverhawks, where they released something that was overpowered. But I mean, like the idea that comes to me is maybe where you can like literally just add portables to a furnace, and that actually like gives you even more benefits than using a portable right beside a bank would, and therefore makes it worth running back and forth to a furnace. I don't know.
So the problem here, from what if I'm interpreting this correctly, is the social skilling aspect of the game seems to be dead or dying. Is that what we're worried about?
Not even like social skilling. It's just more like
the fact that you don't see other people in the game world. Or?
Exactly. Yeah. If you're walking around the world, there are people, but it's way less than what it used to be, and the player numbers don't actually interpret to that, right? Like there are still a lot of players. It's just we are all grouped up in very small places.
I don't know if there's an easy way to solve that, because people like convenience. And in the, back when I began playing RuneScape, walking across the game world was just something you did. Having to go from one city to another was just part of the adventure. It seems to me these days people get really frustrated when they have to take time out of their training to actually get to the objective, or, put any effort into doing anything but gaining XP. And I feel like we're in a kind of a mindset, and I say we, I just mean like the community status quo, if you will, of RPGs in general. Most people want to be training constantly, and they don't want the really kind of the role-playing aspect anymore of the game.
See, but then, I mean, how does old school RuneScape have a bigger audience than RS3 then? I mean, there's obviously I
don't know if that's not the issue, and if that issue doesn't exist, at least in old school RuneScape as well. I mean, they have teleport portals and houses. Everyone's training in probably specific areas. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in old school now, they have as many teleports as we do. It's kind of weird to me when old school players say Lodestone's bad, because they can teleport to every single minigame location. They can teleport to all the cities, which means they could teleport anywhere. And additionally, everyone trains fire making at the one place. At Wintertot, everybody does attack in a certain way. Like everyone in old school trains in all the exact same places too.
People think lodestones are bad because they have zero requirements, not because they let you travel around the game quickly. The problem with the thing that old school gets right about teleports is that you have to spend a fuck ton of money in construction before you actually have a lot of those teleports that are super useful unlocked, or you have to manage having necklaces and stuff like that. Like that's how teleports used to be. And the problem with RS3 is it is simplified that to a point where you don't have to put in any of the work to get the rewards. And I mean, I think what it's actually caused is the RS3 community to become a bit complacent. And I agree that we are frustrated. I mean, I think part of the issue is that we have been spoiled in some ways, and like things are too nice. And it's kind of like, I mean, I talked about this before on shows, but like World of Warcraft removed flying from the game a couple years ago because they decided that it made the world too big.
Didn't they do that again
small.
Recently?
And well, they've done it every expansion since.
That's
so
good.
What they make you do now is they make you get every achievement in a new expansion area before you can fly in it. Which means that you basically have to do the entire area. It's a lot of time. Like
I heard that
like 50 hours.
I heard the 1.4 patch of whatever the newest expansion is removed flying completely from that area of the game. Like you just can't use flying mounts there. I saw that posted on GameZone like yesterday or the day before. Like you had some alpha patch where they just they pulled flying completely because they want you to explore the actual game world. I can find the article if you'd like for reference. Well, other people will talk, but go ahead.
I think Lodestones pretty clearly should have been a reward for achievement diaries, and it's a shame that they weren't. But
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much. I think that's almost become the consensus opinion. Is that's how it should have been done. But I don't think you could retroactively take lodestones away.
You could though. It would piss some people off, but you could absolutely do it. Like the thing is, like this is something that it hinders. Even though we like it and are spoiled by it, and I use them all the time, it actually hinders your immersion in the game. And if there were to be some changes around that, like people would get angry, but I think people would actually enjoy it more. And anyways, I kind of want to let Alice talk because you haven't talked in a while. So what are your thoughts?
Can we go back to the issue of portables and being spread out in the game?
Absolutely.
So what I was thinking, and this is just a thought that just came to mind like a minute ago, but what if portables weren't like a stationary object, but rather like an avatar type thing that like affected the area you were in, and then it would still like encourage people to use those portables at different anvils in different cities, and then it still keeps that community aspect. And it kind of acts as like almost like a summoning pouch. You summon it, you still get it from Treasure Hunter because that's Jagex's prerogative in that area, but it still affects the area, but it also encourages people to spread out, but it doesn't take away the Treasure Hunter.
The only thing I have to say to that is you can put a portable anywhere that affects that area because people are going to be drawn to it. People have just chosen to put them next to banks because they're efficient that way. But I mean, because you could effectively go ahead. I guess this would be a way to nerf it, right? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
There would be
still
some
provide the
backlash.
buffs, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't be the object you have to use. It would just be
Gotcha.
something that buffs the object you have to use, which I actually think is actually a pretty good solution.
I like that. Make it like an aura instead, where it's just
Yeah.
like an area of effect where it lasts. That would also take a lot of griefing out of the situation too, placing items on the ground to block portables and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they could even buff. Honestly, if they're gonna do this, they could buff portables in some way because you're nerfing the efficiency of being right beside a bank and having to now walk 10 squares. So there's an argument to be made that they would need a small buff, which I would be okay with if this was the case, because this would mean people would use the Edgeville bank more, use that, or even the Lumbridge. People would use Lumbee in a different way, where they'd be running back and forth to the forge, things like that. So yeah, a small buff would also be, in my opinion, an okay thing
I
to
just
do.
miss those long trains of people going back and forth from the bank to the anvil or furnace or whatever. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of, that's a nostalgia talking, but
How quickly can you click your bank, hit one, and click the portable, like no XP waste?
Right.
I mean,
That's
there
my
would still
my
obviously
life.
be,
Yep.
Well, you gotta use mouse keys for that. Come on, Hannah. Where's your efficiency?
Get banned. I know.
Mouse keys aren't bannable.
I know. I wish. I hate mouse keys.
Anyway,
How else am I going to train 99 construction in one double XP weekend without mouse keys? My wrist would fall off if I used the mouse.
Fair enough. I think that's just explores a bigger problem with construction.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
We'll get to construction.
That's listed.
That's a whole nother argument right there.
We will move on to part 2 here: skilling versus PvM. Just the first point to make here is both are equally important, yet PvM has all but destroyed money-making profits in skilling. I realize it's probably a somewhat controversial thing to say, although maybe not with this audience. And I want to once again say this from someone who equally enjoys both. Like, I do a fuck ton of PvM. I have over 2,000 Vindicta kills, and I'm at like 600 Vax kills. I do a lot of it, and I quite enjoy it. But it frustrates me that there is no longer good money making. I mean, there are some, we have talked about them, but that a lot of money making methods within skilling have died, and that they didn't have to die. It's just they've died because of PvM drops.
Yeah.
And I think a part of this is that I hold a core belief that skills past 99 should be able to make good money. I don't think that necessarily it should be lower than that. I honestly think that where Jagex should aim to put these skilling methods is either 90 plus or even at 99 in a skill. You should be able to make money. And when I say good at making money, I mean 5 to 10 mil an hour, which is something that we really don't see in any skill. And once again, that's kind of controversial, but you can look at stuff like spiritual mages, my favorite thing to talk about, where you can make now with player-owned dungeons, you can make 6 mil an hour killing spiritual mages, which is the most AFK thing in the game. So yeah. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I can go on for hours if you want about how. Go ahead.
I'll just say the kind of couple, 2 or 3 different counter arguments to this is, one, PvM requires a huge amount of time just learning how to do the thing in addition to training their skills up, and a lot of money up front. So getting 96 Herblore, getting 95 Prayer, getting your tier 90 weapons, things like that. And also requires a huge drain on resources. So you're going through overloads, brews, rocktails, divine energy costs an exorbitant amount of money. So that while you may be, so when people post those videos of like X thing is 10 mil profit an hour, they typically don't calculate how much of a supply cost there is. And additionally, very few people will factor in the amount of time it takes in terms of developing and acquiring skills, and also the amount of time it takes to train all of those skills to the mid 90s or higher, especially for the most profitable boss right now, which is probably AOD, requires both a huge amount of footwork in terms of developing those skills, and also everyone requires you to be functionally maxed in Herblore, Prayer, and combat skills.
And how much money do you make at AOD an hour on average?
On my teams, we probably make about 50 mil an hour.
And exactly, I'm asking for this is. I'm glad this was brought up. I don't think skilling should make that kind of money. I think, well, maybe parts of skilling should.
Very
skilling
few parts
or something like that.
Yeah.
But I am.
Yeah,
This is why.
this is
why
a
I'm
team
arguing.
where 7 people all have tier 92 weapons, and all of us are forte auto attacking.
But this is where I'm arguing. This is why I'm arguing 5 to 10 mil an hour. And I also, before I let Mage talk, I want to say, since this kind of ties into what you're saying, my next point here is patience and skilling is just as valuable as button mashing in PvM. I think this is something that people forget about. But like the trait to be able to mash buttons, like that's a skill that some people have. Other people have the skill of being super patient and able to do something for 10, 20 hours a day that other people would see as mundane, whether that's divination or whatever. And when I say money-making methods, I don't mean super AFK things like the Arc. I mean stuff like divination or rune crafting. And also, as far as cost goes, spiritual mages, you don't need to wear degradable armor or take anything above tier 70 to make 6 mil an hour there. But anyways, go ahead, Mage.
I'm just, if I can still remember, so for high level skilling, like of course when we're talking in crazy numbers like 50 million an hour, I look at PvM as something that needs, or in skilling as well, as that is a skill cost, right? PvM is a skill cost. It's a high skill sink. On the flip side, skilling is a time sink. So it requires high levels of patience to make that level of money. I would never say that I should be able to, skill for a few hours a day and make 50 million gold. But somebody who spent 40 hours building up a chain process, for instance, like they were describing in metalworking for smithing and whatnot, folding of bars, masterwork and all that stuff, that type of thing where if I put 40 hours in to create one thing, okay, I, in my opinion, think that type of effort is just as valuable. It's apples to oranges, but it's still, apples and oranges are equally valuable. That's what I'm just trying to say here is, and maybe you don't agree, maybe you do agree, but 40 hour, yeah, if I put a buttload of time into, like, just to take this into the real world or to use like another example here, if I spend, 50 hours putting together a little model train, that I put together with glue and whatnot, that took, just my patience. Whereas if you're a mixed martial artist and just won, some prize, it's like, okay, those are two different types of skills, but, they're still very valued skills to that, set of people, whatever. That's all I got.
Yeah. What did you have to say, Alice?
Basically, like, I understand that PvM has a lot of skill and time cost even to get into those high end bosses too. But like, really, and I don't think skilling should necessarily be on par. But I really I'm looking for the same kind of button mashing happens in PvM. I wouldn't mind seeing that come to skilling.
Yeah, I totally agree. A part of it, I don't want. What I don't want to see personally is all of skilling be that, because I think, because I think, like as I said, like something that people just lose track of is once again, patience is just as valuable as liking high intensity situations, and something that RuneScape was at its core from when I started playing this game back in RS2 in 2005 is a game that rewarded people from different playstyles. Some people like to go to the Cow Fight Queen and try to grind out and get a dragon chain body. Some people liked to woodcut, and they were both rewarded for those skills, or high-level mining, whichever example you want to list, or even runecrafting gnats back in the day, which was ridiculous money, so much money that you could literally pay people to mule you pure essence because you made so much money that you could afford to pay people to bring you the runes to make gnats.
They had companies for that.
Yeah,
there was whole companies.
I know. I remember those companies. Those were hilarious.
I loved that. Like, I love that type of just ingenuity. It is, it's there's this just missing part of there's a demand in a market forms. I love that about RuneScape. It's just like if there was a demand for something, there was always a little business that would pop up to fill that. Take advantage of that need. And it's hard to find that in skilling these days. Good.
As far as a lot of skill requirements for PvM, I do agree and understand that. Although also, if you look at it, the PvM skills are also the quickest skills to train in the game if trained efficiently. So if you look at something like I imagine that getting 99 woodcutting would take far longer than getting, like getting all your damage dealing skills, maybe minus prayer and herblore to 99. You could probably, take woodcutting would probably take longer, I would guess. Without, we're not talking about bonus XP or anything like that, of course. Here, just base XP. And another solution I think is, if that's a problem, make high level skilling methods that require multiple skills at 99. Like there could be a resource gathering method that required 99 mining, wood cutting, and I can't think of another gathering skill right now.
Divination's technically a gathering skill.
Yeah, divination. If there was a 10 million hour money making method that required those 3 skills to be at 99,
that's an interesting concept. Yeah, like combining skills. And of course, like they did that with an elite skill in another arena, where they took a combination of skills. I'd love to see them take combinations of skills for other non making of elite skill activities. Yeah, that would be great.
Just making an activity.
Yeah.
And also the other, of course, the argument that's always going to come up here too is, but what about bots? Which I think is a silly argument, because we're talking about high level requirements here. Like if you can't find someone's a bot by the time they get 99 woodcutting, then you need to examine your bot system.
Yeah. If Jagex can't detect like 99 or maybe 98% of bots in 2017, I honestly don't think the game would have made it to 2017 if that was the case in the first place.
You're probably just playing old school at that point.
Yeah. That's sad, but I mean, and again, different technology, right? It's from a different era, so they probably have a very real different host of limitations and issues.
And the other big point to make here is PvM should not be the most efficient way to get skilling supplies. And I say that with some caveats. I think that we would be completely fine if there were a couple bosses in the game and a couple Slayer monsters that dropped a lot of skilling supplies. But we are at a point in the game where that is the primary drops from anything that comes out. Any kind of monster that comes out, primary drops for skilling supplies. And then other than that, you have some rare drops for bosses. And God Wars 2 is a great offender of this. And I think this issue starts with God Wars 1 even. Probably. I mean, it was like I think before God Wars 1 it was relatively reasonable, but God Wars 1 is kind of where this shit started ramping up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's kind of when it really started. And it didn't have really any impact in its infancy, but fast forward, and when I guess developers realized how popular, skilling drops were, wow, surprise, surprise, that, they just were like, yeah, we can just do this with everything, I guess. And, probably not thinking of the far-reaching future consequences, and here we are.
Yeah, and I also think, part of it is, it didn't have a big effect when God Wars 1 came out because that was only one area. Like, if God Wars 1 had been the only area that dropped a ton of skilling supplies, we wouldn't be in this case, and God Wars 1 would be fine.
Yeah, what got us here was the repeated use of it over and over again. And I hate to call it laziness, but it's more easy. It's just easy to do that, because what do people like? Cool, let's give them what they like.
It's easier to do that than to buff the skill, right? Like, like having to buff woodcutting and or farming to bring in more herbs and or logs, that takes more work than just adding a new boss. And it also generates more hype as well. Anyways,
if I may, real quick, just like back then, doing that would have been argued again with the fact, but if you're boosting skilling resources, you're actually just feeding bots. That argument doesn't hold up in 2017, but it was valid back then and may have been why, or at least a contributing factor to why we are where we are right now.
That's a good point.
Just a little thought. Continue.
Well, I'll also say I don't think this is a very controversial opinion at all. It's bizarre to me that Jagex hasn't changed this, because no high-level PvMer likes skilling drops. They're terrible. They get released and they immediately crash. Like when you get Dwarfweed seeds at Araxor, that's the worst drop on the table. Herbs are bad drops. Logs are bad drops. The worst drop on the AOD tables are the ones that are skilling supplies. Nobody wants skilling supplies to be dropped, especially not PvMers.
Well, I mean, it depends what we're talking about, right? Because I think smithable skilling drops are some of the favorites, especially at God Wars 2.
Well, yeah, the ones with an alk floor, for sure, are popular. I'm just talking about the ones without an alk floor.
Sure. And we'll get into the alk floor a little bit more later and kind of cover that. But do you have anything to add, Alice?
Well, it's just like it's runaway is the drops being added to all these bosses. It's just started like with God Wars 1, like you said, and then God Wars 2 is a major offender of that. And and I know Jagex had mentioned just replacing, the alkables with, gold, and the impact of that, according to Jagex at least, is minimal. And I don't have the data to say either way, but I just would like to see something done in regard to that.
Yeah, and this is something that's, once again, this is a hard thing to fix, and it's also something that is not going to generate a lot of hype. But this is, in my opinion, some kind of like whether it's rebalancing summoning or potentially rebalancing lodestones to make them harder to get. It's something that is good for the long-term health of the game. Even if short-term it's not a flashy new update, long-term fixing this is extremely healthy to the game. And the final part we have here is skilling and PvM should complement each other. I think this is the biggest mistake Jagex made when they started introducing. I mean, it really starts with Dragon Armor, but I have a bullet point here: is should we rework all T70 plus armor? And kind of what I mean by that is, I think in a perfect world, the way Jagex would have made things is they would have reinvented smithing in like 2006 or 2007 with what they're suggesting now. And what they would do is they would make it take, 5 hours to make one piece of armor, and then they would have a boss that, every 5 hours dropped another piece that you then attach to that raw piece of armor you made with smithing, and then that's how you would make your armor. It would require both, and both would require a lot of time.
Is this
There's
tradable?
no symbiote.
Sorry.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Mage.
No, I was just had a question. Well, in this world, is that tradable? And the answer is yes. Okay.
Yes, both are tradable, and they hold their value because they both take a lot of time to make.
I wouldn't mind that. Sorry.
Yeah, there's no symbiosis anymore. That's what I miss the most. Is there's no symbiosis between skillers and PvMers, and that's also like created a rift in between those two play styles, and
That's
it's
very
just really
true.
unfortunate that that's happened.
It's extremely true. Skillers and PvMers went hand in hand back when back in at least classic, and most of what I remember is the good old days, if you will. I remember is being propped up by the PvM community. I mean, that's why fishing is like my favorite skill. It's not because it's interesting. It's not because, anything more than really that I have really fond memories of being it really in demand and being, people really wanted my services. So I really enjoyed fishing. And that's kind of where those good memories come from. And that's why it's my favorite skill. But that symbiosis is so important for a healthy game. If you're going to have,
Especially RuneScape. I mean, RuneScape is not like any other game. Like it was important, and one of the reasons I came back to this game is because skilling is so important to it. And it's it's still important, but now it's like important as a way to earn XP, not important as a way to make things anymore, which always makes me sad.
Well, one of my favorite memories is and this was part of the product of not having a GE, but when I was training Herblore, it was a very, in demand skill back then, and I was at, Edgeville selling supersets, and that was a high demand, piece of content that only came from people who, took the time to really build up their Herblore skill.
Yeah, one of my favorite memories is 2006 cutting magic logs in the Tree Gnome Stronghold. Like, yeah.
Oh yeah. And then that was kind of the debate even when it came to like skilling is like, do I go for wood cutting and produce magic logs, or do I go for fishing and produce sharks? And kind of figuring that out. And some of my friends went with fishing, and then some of us went with wood cutting, and yeah, it was so much fun. And then, you kind of compared, like, should I have gone with sharks, or should I have gone with magic logs? But I think magic logs kind of won out for a while because sharks were being dropped in PvM tables increasingly.
That reminds me so much of my childhood. It's like my best friend, Griffin1356. He was the miner, I was the fisher, and we would just basically trade resources. He'd make the armor, I'd provide us food for combat. It was great. It was like, I loved that experience.
Totally agree. And we will move on to part 3 here, mining and smithing. The first thing we have to talk about here is the pole. As I guess we've covered the pole in general a lot on previous shows, so we won't have to go super in depth here. But Jagex announced a few months ago that they were going to run a straw poll to see if people would be okay with a high-level only update, and if that had any traction, that they would then run an in-game poll, which is currently running in-game. It's kind of what sparked this whole discussion, and it is obviously a super controversial thing that a lot of people are angry about, and I would say there are ridiculous conspiracy theories, and then there is, Jagex just trying to gauge player feedback.
Point for the conspiracy theorists: Yes has stolen another 1% of the vote.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. Hannah, do you want kind of a up to date as of now what the poll looks like?
Sure.
So I'm looking at yes at 14,000 votes, 29%, and I'm looking at no of 34,000 votes at 70%.
Yeah, it's kind of. I guess it actually makes sense that yes is growing, because I think all the no's were like ready to log in day zero, and send their votes, and now the yeses are probably people who care less. TBH.
It's too. I said that someone brought this up to me, and I was like, yeah. They were like, we won. You can call it. I was like, unless someone famous gets on YouTube with an opinion that yes should win, then I'm happy. We're good. But like, there's still a chance that everyone who voted no could switch their votes, and that still scares me. So conspiracy theorists abound. Go ahead.
Yeah, and there's also, we all know Jagex is gonna log in the night before the poll ends and just cast whatever is needed for 75% yes, and because we all know that that's the update they wanted to put out.
Exactly.
If you can't hear the sarcasm in my voice, it's there. And I think a big question about this, something that I saw raised on the forums, is why did 120 Slayer come first? We've been talking about mining and smithing, I think, since 2013, since literally 2 years before I came back to the game, if I remember correctly. And yet somehow mining and smithing was suggested a year ago, or not mining and smithing, 120 Slayer was suggested a year ago and is already in game today.
Albeit incomplete.
Well, I guess, but we'll cover that a little bit later.
It's more complete than the mining and smithing. I'll give you that.
And it's also, to me, the biggest issue was that there was no Slayer Master. But like I said, I have a discussion on that a little bit later. But it's just it's kind of a thing of like, if mining and smithing's been talked about for so long, why is it not being? Why did you? And it was supposed to come out. It was actually supposed to come out in September of last year, I think. And you said, okay, we're gonna put this on hold. It just doesn't make sense that you wouldn't have made the mining and smithing rework a part of Menaphos over Slayer. Like, obviously, Slayer should go to 120 relatively soon. No argument there. But this seems like another case of PvM overtaking skilling, and for no real good reason other than Slayer is popular. But I would argue Slayer is popular because it sucks to skill right now. Like, if there was more skilling diversity, I think there's plenty of people, like I think Sarah, who is a big listener to our show, would probably do more skilling if she was able to make money that way. But she does Slayer. I mean, she likes Slayer as well, but I think a lot of people do Slayer because it makes money, not because they love it. And it's popular because they update it constantly, not because it's necessarily the best skill in the game.
Interesting. So from a skilling point of view here, because technically Slayer is a skill, it is one of my least favorite skills because combat's not high on my list of things to do in the game. But, of course, Slayer, anytime I ask somebody about Slayer, I've never really come across anyone who hates it besides like a very few. Like, I always feel like, people are generally on a positive side when it comes to Slayer, which I feel like is why it gets as much attention as it does. It just seems to be like, well, you can't go wrong with a Slayer update. 9 out of 10 people like Slayer, it seems. So I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but it just feels that way to me.
I mean, I think you're right that it's that way, but I think that way was caused by the fact that other skills have not been updated. Like, I don't think that like in a world where other skills were equally updated as Slayer and money making was maintained in other skills like it is in Slayer, they would still be popular like Slayer is. The thing is
cyclical.
Yeah, and Slayer's also, honestly, it's easier to update. Like, because you just throw skilling resources into some monsters and you're done.
Yeah,
whereas like thinking about how to add a money making method
that's a really
to
good
mining
point.
or smithing is hard.
That's a really good point. That if skilling resources were like, nope, you can't do that anymore, Slayer would become actually hard to update all of a sudden. Good.
think the reason was with Menaphos is one, the thematic tie kind of made sense, and two, it's like a very low level update compared to something like reworking a skill. It's like all they did was retexture some mobs, literally retextured mobs, and made a new dungeon that was just a bunch of other dungeons with new textures, and gave us the pyramid, and that was pretty much it. It was
Still, I mean,
I don't know. I think the update was very minor in comparison to what it would take to rework a skill. It was just the same, almost identical stuff with just new paint.
I mean, in some ways you're right, but new paint is a lot of work. I mean, I think it's like I don't feel like that's easy to just saying it's a retextured monster. Like making that texture is a lot of time. I think there's a big thing there with Menaphos in general, where people tried to argue that it's just beautiful textures in the whole desert, but like that, I don't know, that takes a lot of time. But also, I do agree with you, although originally Slayer was pitched as a much bigger update where they were going to rebalance old Slayer monsters. So just in a world where that came out, or even if we go back like 9 months and say, okay, Jagex is telling us 120 Slayer is coming and it's going to involve rebalancing Slayer monsters, that to me is about as equal of an update as Mine and Smithy. Maybe not quite. But and also if they had done something out of the new Slayer Master, that probably should have been there. So clearly they dropped a lot of 120 Slayer for time, but as 120 Slayer should have come out, or even like looking at 120 Slayers already getting more monsters added to it by Mod Ramen, like I don't know. It's just those are good points though, but I think it's just a little strange.
My issue with Slayer isn't so much as, like I hold 120 Slayer as of right now, but my issue with Slayer is that it seems to me it's kind of deviated from what low-end Slayer was, where like you needed a specific item like spiny helmet, salt shaker, rock hammer, things like that, and it's gone to just like the level requirement to defeat these mobs. And I kind of enjoyed the aspect of having to change your gear to adapt to these new mobs that would be coming out, and that seems like they've kind of gone away from that. I mean, they do have the feather, but that's kind of blanketed to the entire dungeon in Menaphos.
Yeah, and
yeah, totally agree with all of that.
Yeah, they've moved away a lot from a lot of the complexity of Slayer. I actually totally agree too. And the next story, I guess I already kind of said this, but why were people? Actually, no, I didn't say this. I got my head confused. Anyways, something Jagex has said in this poll is that the drop table rework is really hard and it's going to take a lot of time. And I guess my biggest question is, why weren't you working on this since last September then? Like, if this was a really hard rebalance to do, you should have had a JMod part-time working on it the entire year to already be ready. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with the Mine and Smithy rework in general, and I think where a lot of the community anger comes from is you've been talking about this for 4 years, and now you're like, oh shit, now we have to do this update. When you could have been laying the preliminary work for it for the past 4 years and made this easier on yourselves. But you basically like that kid in high school who doesn't do homework till the night before it's due, and then you're like, how am I going to write a 10-page book report by tomorrow morning? Well, you had 3 months to do it. That's how you're going to write a 10-page book report by tomorrow morning.
I could write a book on how to write a book report, and that was due from that's very true. And then why have they been dragging their heels is the question that I have more than anything else. Is why are they so resistant to this in the first place? That they've had to kind of drag it out this long. And if I had to kind of answer my own question, I think it's fear to disrupt the status quo, fear to end up in another position like they put themselves in with the AOC, fear that they are going to have to split into old school RuneScape, RuneScape 3 and RuneScape 2014 or something.
I also wonder if it's fear of the fact that it's not a glamorous update. Like, once again,
nothing to show for it, really. Is that what you'd like to new players?
Yeah, like if they rework Mine and Smithy, a lot of people already have 99. And so therefore it's not going to feel glamorous to those people. And I think that's part of it. Whereas like if you release a new skill, there's this whole glamour about training this new skill. Whereas reworking the skill doesn't have that glamour. And I think that's potentially an issue. And I don't know. I don't know how you solve that.
Well, it's about, like they have to have something to advertise, with the update and to like generate hype and images from, and nobody likes engine work, but like it's necessary. And it's the same thing with drop tables, in my opinion. It's stuff that's behind the scenes. It's all numbers and coding, and it's not graphical, and it's not a new monster, it's not a new boss, and it's not a new skill.
Yeah. And
I mean, here's my thing, right? Like, this is the perfect time, actually, to do the mining and smithing rework. If waiting 3 years has actually been their most brilliant genius plan all along, I'll tell you why this might be the case. It's because you have RuneScape coming to mobile in 2018. This is the perfect time to have your lull, because you're going to have that you've never had, basically since RuneScape went from, I don't even know, I wouldn't even compare HD. Yeah. Like, this is bigger than HD. So
RuneScape has never launched on a new platform before.
This is amazing. Like, like that hype is gonna completely bring any like life you lost from just a quiet few months because you had to do mining and smithing. I don't know, but I feel justified in being able to say that. Like, I don't know anyone who's not excited and won't come back to try out RuneScape on mobile.
Well, I also think like you can do that, like you can do this update slowly and still put out other updates like beside it. Like, you don't have to like make this update the main focus, but it should be being worked on. Like, that's the most frustrating thing. Like I said with the book report analogy, if you had just been working on mining and smithing slowly since last year, there's no way you wouldn't be mostly done with it by now.
To be fair, they have thrown it in the trash. Like, at least I've watched them throw away at least 2 design documents.
Well, yes, but how haven't they claim that the hardest part is rebalancing drop tables,
that I don't
lowering
believe.
the tiers of armor, right?
That's silly.
And I do believe that myself, and I understand it. I don't. But that's work they could have been doing this whole time, because that's work that hasn't changed. Like, the scope of that work doesn't. No matter how you rework the skill, valid. You're gonna have to redo drop tables, and you're gonna have to rebalance armor tiers at some point.
Yeah.
And the fact
there's no way around it ever.
Yeah. Beyond. Doing beyond winning this poll and then them never updating the second part of the skill, which is what
they want, right?
Yeah,
but fair enough.
And the next point here is the low level part of the game matters. This is why we got Menafos. If you dropping low level things and not working on them, it hurts new players. And you can argue that new players don't make their own armor anyway. Well, yeah, duh, of course they don't. But if you're a new player who joins this game and you try to check out mining and smithing, and you would just be really confused as to why this skill is completely fucking useless. You can make tier 50 armor at level 96 smithing. Yeah. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to you as a new player.
The only time the smithing table ever made sense was in the first year of the game, and that's it.
Yeah.
It became obsolete literally 15 years ago. Like, it was fine the first year, and then after that they were like, this is weird. Why is Rune 99? We have dragon armor at 60 that's not crafted. Like, it just didn't make sense. And it's just gotten, I like to call it the Jenga effect. The longer you wait, the taller and trickier the tower becomes to, pull a brick out from underneath and slide a new one into.
I think the real answer here is that they want skills to be as miserable to train and useless as possible to get people to just train it with spins.
There you go. It's a social experiment to see if they can drive people into spending money. It's like driving you to drink, driving you to spin. Oh, yeah.
Something that I think is really important to pull out, it's not the most scientific poll, but something to point out is like the quick poll on the main page right now is asking like, what is the first thing you plan on doing in Ars Mobile? And 77% say skilling.
Yeah. Which, but nobody skills, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And skilling is already suited well for mobile. I don't know how well bossing is
not
suited
at all.
for mobile. Like, I'm interested in how they will solve that problem, but
you'll be able to do you'll be able to do any boss. It will suck to do some of them, but like QBD and below in difficulty, there's not going to be a problem doing it on mobile, in my opinion. And especially like Slayer's going to be a cakewalk.
Slayer, I agree with. QBD, sometimes I even have trouble with like keyboard and mouse because I'm just bad at combat. So I guess sliding scale for your skill for sure.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you can AFK QBD.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you're comfortable at a boss, you're gonna be able to do it on mobile if it's QBD or easier.
I might have to get a bigger screen for my like a phone with like a. I have to go with like a Note or something, you know.
I was actually gonna.
Just do tablet.
I was gonna buy the iPhone SE as my next iPhone, which is the super small one because I love small screens. And then RuneScape Mobile got announced, so I guess I'm sticking with the plus size iPhone. Which I mean, at least there would be a use for it now. But like, I would literally be getting a tiny phone if it wasn't for RuneScape Mobile. So thanks, Jagex.
Yeah, thanks, Jagex.
Clearly, you know what? Conspiracy theory: Apple is giving Jagex money to release RuneScape Mobile, so people will buy bigger phones.
It's true. It's true. It's actually like a tripartisan effort between like all like the three major cell phone manufacturers for sure.
And
okay, for real, RuneScape Mobile gets announced, then Apple announces that the new phone is going to be the most expensive one yet. I don't think that's a conspiracy.
That's.
I think that's just a fact.
That's just cold hard fact right there. Absolutely.
You've exposed it all.
Confirmed. Apple pay for bonds.
We gotta take this to New York Times.
We do.
It's a conspiracy. They already know. The media's already in on it. Don't you know? Fake news. All right. Next subject. Sorry.
We gotta take this to, I don't know, our own news website. I can't think what to call it.
RuneScape.life.
RuneScape.life.
Someday I'm gonna get use out of that domain. I just don't know when.
Next part. And this kind of ties into them saying drop tables are hard to rework. And to me, there's a very simple solution to that. Make rune and below armor the basis for PvM drops. Leave the high alch values where they are. People will always complain about high alching and how it's a terrible thing, but there are values to high alching, and what it does is, as we've talked about before, it creates a floor for item value. Like, the main reason there is not a fuck ton of dead content in RuneScape as far as PvM goes is because of alchables. Alchables create a floor for your content, so therefore, like, if God Wars 1 did not drop alchables, nobody would go there anymore. But thanks to alchables being dropped at God Wars 1, you can make 6 mil an hour at Spiritual Mages. This is a good thing. It means that old content does not have to be worked over as much as it would if everything had no floor to it. Also, I think 15 years of inflation have created a place where alchables aren't that much money anymore. Like, back in the day, alching something for 50k was actually a lot of money. 50k doesn't mean that much, because we've had 15 years of inflation and better ways to make money. Like I said, there are negatives, but I think the negatives are outweighed by the positives.
I'm gonna have to agree with that, yeah.
And Jagex has also said that inflation is not near as bad as what we think it is. Obviously, there is some inflation, but it's not ridiculous. I think there is a potential reason here to maybe rework how alching works. I think, me personally, I would be okay if they readjusted alching and made it something that required 99 magic to use.
Interesting.
Or, go ahead.
I would put it more like 92 just to not be as elitist about it. But if it is a good money, like that would make it a much more exclusive money maker for sure. I
don't even know if it would. I don't even know if it would be a big money maker. It would just be a way. Like, the main reason I say this is as a way to combat bots. Like, currently, it's pretty easy to make an alching bot.
Yeah.
And you don't need to even bot. You just go in legacy mode and auto click.
Right. You need the most basic type of macro, really. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think another thing they could do is they could remove alching from magic and add it to an elite skill, either a new elite skill, like we've talked about dark magic or necromancy being the next elite skill.
Oh yeah, bring back dark magic. That would be awesome.
They could do something like that. They could even add it as something that requires you to have a high level invention. Anything that would lock out bots in a much greater way.
So we just learned today that we're pretty much getting an alch machine. What are your thoughts on that? If you want to kind of gate alching to like 99, how do you feel? And of course, elite
that
skill.
That alch machine's already gated, exactly.
Yeah.
So I have zero problem with it. I'm guessing it's gated, and I'm guessing it's going to cost a decent amount or be super slow. So hopefully, like I'm guessing that it's going to be balanced in one of those two ways.
Alchemizer requiring 72 invention to create, which is pretty decent considering all the prereqs for that.
Yeah,
not bad.
And also, I think the other option is something I have entitled Ultra Alk. And this is basically if they were just nerf High Alk, essentially, make it so that High Alk, like the High Alk value of armors is like half of what it is now, but introduce Ultra Alk, which once again, literally would either just go in elite skill or at 99 or 92 magic, and would basically just work the way High Alk would today, but wouldn't actually remove High Alk. It would just be High Alk at a higher level.
Can we all agree to just get rid of Low Alk?
Yeah.
Does anyone use the Low Alk? I'm genuinely curious.
Not anymore. No,
well, I don't think so. But I'm looking at, not to insert batch 2 too much in here, but I'm looking at Alchemizer. There's 2 of them, and one Alchemizer Mark II is 108 invention. So
we can actually
separating that out. What if they're separating it out by like high and low?
That's an interesting thought. I thought it had to do with the capacity, aka like how long the machine would run AFK. I thought that's where they were going with that. But that's also a possibility. Is if the regular Alchemizer is low alch, no one's gonna use it.
Yeah, I would hope that they wouldn't add a low alch thing to an elite skill, to be honest. But we'll have to wait to find out.
It's Shagex, you never know.
And I think another thing they need to do is add more unique drops to Slayer monsters. Like I think we talked about this a little bit, that Slayer monsters have had unique mechanics removed from them, and I think another issue is they've had unique drops removed from them. Like a big part of training Slayer back in 2005 was trying to get up to level 85 to get Abyssal Whips, and now like there's nothing. I mean, you have a few things. You have a lot of gloves that drop or boots that drop from Slayer monsters, but there's not like these badass weapons and such. And I guess maybe there's not enough room in Slayer, or maybe what they should do is drop a weapon component and have the other weapon component drop from a boss of some kind, but some kind of unique drop that would actually allow you to make less money per hour but make more money per rare drop, basically.
So I'm all about like making the big money on the rare drops, and like I have the unpopular opinion that combat should mostly lose you money and then gain you a lot of money, and then that average trends upwards generally, but like that's always been my opinion, and it's been kind of unpopular, but that's not a bad way of kind of balancing that. I apologize. Yeah. There might be some background noise. I may have to mute myself.
I don't hear anything now, but I would say as far as that goes, I think the problem is it's not as engaging. Like I think you should make less money, but not necessarily like lose money when on base drops, but I mean, especially because if you look at like the Magister, I think the Magister has a problem where it's not super popular, and I think part of that is because you basically have to invest 300 mil to make 600 mil, and it's just not a fun circle.
I will say that just for everyone, if skill supplies were taken off of PvM drop tables and replaced with straight gold or alchables or something, PvM would make more money on average, because right now the only thing holding back Araxor from being constant profit is the fact you can get dwarf seeds or U logs. If those were removed and replaced with a drop the equivalent, say on the level of rune plate bodies or something, because that's another drop you could get, then a GP per hour to Araxor without a rare drop would just go up. So PvM would be making even more money if this
That's a win-win.
No. Well, that's what I was saying earlier. That's what I'm saying.
And I love that.
That's what I was saying earlier. I was just saying that if your argument is more a critique of how much money it makes and less a critique of just the fact there are skilling supplies, then removing skilling supplies just means PvM is even more money.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's here argument is how much money it makes. Like, I don't think any of us have a problem with that. It's more that it makes money at the detriment to skilling, or at least that's my perspective, is that it hurts skilling at such a core level, and that's the problem. Like, I want symbiosis, and I want equality between skilling and PvM, where they both make good money.
That's my train of thought too.
Yeah, I completely want people who do high-level combat to be rich beyond their wildest dreams. Why? So they can send all that money my way to buy all their supplies to keep doing what they love. Like, that's what I want.
Buying Super Ceridome brews at 60k a piece.
Great. I won't even get into a skilling rant. Never mind. Good.
I mean, I paid my most recent purchase of PvM supplies. I just bought 1 bill worth of PvM supplies across the board. Soups, rocktails, brews, super brews, and restores. I spent a total of 1 bill.
People like
me are keeping it up.
Yeah, we need more.
We're holding
people
this
like
economy.
So the final thing in this little paragraph, create gold sinks. RuneScape does not have enough actual gold sinks. People complain about inflation and they complain about high alch. I think we've made a good case that high alch is a more positive than it is a negative. But the way to fix the negative to high alchemy, or even just straight up gold drops, is fucking gold sinks. Every other MMO does it. You can buy a 50,000 gold mount in World of Warcraft, I believe, which is a decent amount of money in that game. Why are there not expensive pets or expensive outfits that are purely cosmetic that just cost a lot of gold to buy?
I think they were
People
going
would
with that for
eat
bonds.
that shit up.
Yeah. People, and I think that's what they were going for with bonds, but of course the hidden agenda there for
Not
them
a
was
gold
to,
sink.
yeah, it was for them to, they were hoping people would spend their GP, so when they wanted to purchase an outfit, they'd have to spend their gold, sinking the gold, but it's just putting the gold somewhere else, to someone else.
Exactly.
Sinking it out of the game completely
True.
would be a much better thing. I don't know if Jagex is willing to give up their cash cow.
They don't.
Or
they
not
don't need
give
a lot
up,
of outfits. They could put one outfit out every 5 years.
That's true,
and
if
people
it's a
would still
stupid
buy
amount
it.
of money.
People will buy it exactly. People will buy it because it's a stupid amount of money. It doesn't like you don't have to give up your Solomon's General Store or your Treasure Hunter outfits. You just need one outfit, even one outfit a year, one pet a year that cost 1 billion gold for each of them. Would be an amazing gold sink. Every rich person in the game would buy it.
Why not just do that with new dyes? Because Clue Scroll dyes are not going to go down. Like third age dyes are extremely rare. There's
If they
something
keep
like,
getting
say
duped.
4 bill. But what if you released, instead of the ice dye or the gilded dye being on treasure trails, why not just say like ice dyes are 1 bill at this general
NPC.
store or whatever,
Yeah.
and gilded dyes are 1.5 bill, and they still won't be as desirable as blood or third age.
As long
but,
as it doesn't
yeah.
devalue clue scrolls, because I do actually value the kind of like little like skilling lottery that they have, where that like it's a way to kind of make money without doing really anything, but just kind of chatting with your friends and running around the world.
I would
Absolutely,
definitely say
that's why you just make the price
Yeah.
of the dyes that you could buy in the shop just half the price of the treasure trail ones. I mean, obviously
Also-
Shadow and Barrows will be low, but
I mean, also the thing is, you don't have to put every dye there, right? Like once again, this is a shop you don't have to update often. You just have to put a couple items in there a year,
Yeah.
or even every 5 years. Like it doesn't have to be the quantity of items that are added to treasure trails. So I think if they added 1 or 2 dyes to a shop like this, that would be completely fine. I wouldn't move all dyes there. And also, yeah, like David said, I mean, honestly, David, I'd be okay if they made it a 10 mil dye, if they made it the most expensive dye in the game.
I would be fine if like every third die or something was put in like a shop like that. Just so it's like as long as treasure trails is still a viable way to like kind of hit a little like lottery for yourself.
Yeah.
Then I'm totally fine with that. Like just don't.
And
We learned that pulling resources from one area of the game and dumping them into the other is not fair for that other part of the game.
Oh yeah,
So-
I think, to be clear, I'm not suggesting put third age dyes in a shop. Obviously,
I
third
hear
age
ya.
dyes are still, and they're still, they're still over 4 bill. So it's like, worst, maybe they crashed to 3 bill. Like it's still like, that's still like decent.
Yeah. And I mean, and I don't even know if they. I mean, I guess it's hard to tell, but what will keep the man? I guess they might have to make them cheaper just so that I guess if you made it the most expensive dye in the game, that might hurt values. But the other option I have here is untradeable DPS and or skilling boost items that are bought from a vendor. This is a great way, once again, to introduce a sink. You have a vendor who sells a way to boost skilling or DPS by straight up gold. Would be amazing. And I think all these gold sinks as well. People always suggest stuff like a 5% tax on the GE or a 5% tax when you're gambling in the duel arena, which I think are okay money sinks, but they don't actually sink that much money. Whereas things like this would really hit cash people who have giant cash stacks hard.
Here's
which
what
is
happens.
To be fair,
happen.
I've lost over 100 bill at the duel arena, so 5%
Yeah, but
of 100
you
bill is
haven't.
pretty
You
good.
have like a serious problem though. No offense.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like I mean, are you having fun losing the money? Because I guess it's not a problem if you're having fun, I suppose. But
I mean, it's like it's most of it is money that I just made at the duel arena anyways. It's like
Yeah,
It's like I got up to
as long as you're not dropping your credit card or debit card to do it, then it's not really a problem per se.
Yeah, no. I just wanted two of every P hat. I didn't think that was too much to ask, and apparently it was.
Yeah, I can confirm that's too much to ask. Can't even get one. But anyway, sorry. Continue.
And I think the other option here, as far as drop tables are hard to rework, just remove mining and smithing drops from PvM and fix it slowly over time. I don't know why they don't think this is a viable option. I think people think this would hurt PvM far more than it would. Like, it would absolutely kill the profitability of some things. Like, I think God Wars 2 would be fucked. I think God Wars 1 would be fucked in some ways, but and QBD would be massively fucked. But you can look at stuff like, I don't think Rax would not be affected that much by this. I don't think Telos would not be affected. Well, streaking at Telos would be affected by this, but 999ing Telos or going for rare drops at Telos would not be affected by this. AOD would not be affected by this. Spiritual mages, I'll list them again, they would barely be affected by this because they generally drop battle staffs and stuff like that. They drop a little bit of rune and smithing supplies, but they actually drop other alchemies instead. So to me, it's a perfectly viable option to just remove it. Like, skilling has suffered for years while PvM has flourished, and PvM is in a place where it can stand to be hurt a little bit. Like, I don't think it would hurt it that much if this were to happen. Obviously, there was an uproar last year when this is where the famous Mod Timbo phrase, just drop your coal because it's going to be useless, and people were like, oh my god, how dare you say that, which I actually love Mod Timbo for saying that. He's one of my favorite J-mods, and part of it comes from that statement, because to me that's the exact mentality that Jagex should have had and should have kept, is like, items, shit's going to lose its value sometime, and it's okay if that happens. Anyways, anybody have any thoughts on that?
I have to say, the whole Mod Timbo comment caught me off guard initially. Like, I was like, have some respect for your game, but at the same time, sometimes you have to have just a fuck it all attitude if you're gonna, actually make any changes. Like, if you're actually gonna make any lasting, impact-worthy changes, you may have to break it before you can fix it, or you may at the very least have to be willing to just not let public opinion tear you in every single direction at the same time, which is, I think, what has killed this project repeatedly, is just they can't take any form of criticism that isn't spot on. Yes, good job, release this. Like, as soon as like 25% of the player base is like, you can't do this, they're like, all right, back to the drawing board. Like, they do need to kind of have a more confident attitude in their ability to develop innovative content if they're going to exactly try to do that in the first place. I don't know. Go ahead.
Go ahead and break it.
Yep.
Break it a little bit. Don't be afraid.
How are we ever going to grow?
I think a big problem here is I think, once again, we talk about that poll on the RuneScape website. 77% of people excited for RuneScape Mobile to do skilling, but skilling isn't a thing. And I think that perspective of skilling isn't popular is because the people who are most likely to talk in a community are the people who are engaged in PvM. It's just something about that attitude of being a PvMer or PvPer that makes you a vocal person in the community. I don't know. There's probably someone who could have, scientific reasons for that. I am not the person who has them. But I think you can look at almost any game like that and see that, where, to me, I personally believe that when it comes to RS3, the silent majority of players are skillers. I think RS3 audience skews older and also skews more skilling based than a lot of other video games, and especially than old school RuneScape. I think old school RuneScape is like people who are in their early to mid 20s and who love combat and or PvP to a much larger degree than what you would see, I think, in RS3, where RS3, I think the average age of play, I feel like there's just so many players I know that are over 50 years old who play this game.
To borrow from that argument, if I may.
Sure.
Something that just kind of crossed my mind as you were making the comparison between old school RuneScape and RuneScape 3, bringing up the fact that combat is extremely popular in old school RuneScape, though it skews, I think, more to the PvP realm. But on the flip side, they actually have a really healthy skilling economy in that game.
Yeah. Well,
And
I think that game's lucky because it's new. Like that's why that skilling economy is healthy because it's new.
That's what I was going to
starting the economy from zero again. Like I think that really fucking helps.
So, do you think that old school RuneScape is bound to run into the same problem eventually if they continue with the?
Yes,
they could.
Yeah.
Although they seem to be curving it. Sorry, I should let.
Yeah, I want to hear. David sounded pretty confident about that. I'd love to hear more.
A lot of the new bosses that seem to be coming into that game drop skilling supplies. Eventually, everybody will either do things like Winter Tot that don't bring skilling supplies into the game because those are more efficient XP wise. If you look at like the streams of the most popular people playing OS, it's like they're doing Barbarian Fishing, they're doing Winter Tot, they're doing, pretty much they're doing the new rune crafting method. So they're basically doing max XP methods, and that seems to be the direction of the updates they're bringing in. And then secondly, their PvM updates are slowly starting to bring more and more skilling supplies in. So it could take a little while, but I think that, and it won't be as drastic as RS3, because I don't think they'll ever do something like God Wars Dungeon 2. And of course, the other thing is you'll never be able to kill mobs as fast. A big thing is we have the same drop tables for some creatures that we did 10 years ago, and the combat system is so radically different that we could kill hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of abyssal demons an hour, which is a huge game changer. So I don't think it'll be the same extent, but over time you'll start to see something more and more similar to what we have here.
And I think oh, sorry. And I think part of the thing is that game is lucky where it gets to learn from RS3's mistakes. So, the old school RuneScape gets to watch the meltdown that's been happening on the subreddit the past few weeks over the mine and smithing thing and think, okay, how do we solve that problem for our game so we don't ever get to a point where it's as bad as it is in RS3? And I think they've kind of proven that with, like they nerfed Zia, or I think it's Zia or Zulrah. I don't remember the freaking name of the boss, but they
nerfed Zulrah, yeah, because Zulrah was bringing too much money in the game.
I guess, yeah. They nerfed Zulrah because she was bringing too much money into the game, and I also think part of that was she still dropped skilling supplies, but obviously they nerfed how many skilling supplies. So I think they're showing a potential to avoid this problem, but I don't know, and I think RS3, if RS3 sets the example for them and starts fixing this problem, I think they could avoid it altogether. It just depends if they are paying attention or if they care. And something I think we don't know is, does Jagex as a company care about skilling as much as it used to? It's kind of hard to tell. But there's one final part in here, and then we'll move on to part 4, and that is that ignoring these problems will just make them worse. We are not here because of an update that happened 6 months ago, or an update that happened a year ago, or even an update that happened 5 years ago. We're here because of a slow, over time, just more and more updates that have gotten us to this point where skilling resources are a dime a dozen. And that's hard to correct. Whereas if they had listened to, like, there were players yelling about this 7-8 years ago that this was going to be a problem, and Jagex ignored that advice, and here we are in the world where this is a problem. And on to part 4 here. Why is the community so angry? First thing I have listed is overreacting. I think a lot of it comes from just people on Reddit share conspiracy theories and shit like that. We've made a lot of jokes about conspiracy theories. I mean, there's people who are still, even though Jagex made the poll that is currently running require a supermajority yes to pass, there are people who still say that Jagex wanted yes to be the winner and that they are biased in this. If they were biased, they would not have given us the poll to choose.
They're just trying to save face to bury the conspiracy, but don't you worry. It will come back in a later poll, or they'll find a way to... It's just because they were clearly getting caught in the mainstream, and, that's clearly what happened here, so they have to lick their wounds, but the Illuminati will be back to roost another day, don't you worry. Yeah. I'm exactly. Kappa.
I think the other part of it... like the overreacting is definitely present, but also like we have a super passionate player base, and I think a lot of the complaints also come from
where mine came from.
Yeah,
sure.
That's where mine comes from.
Because I go back and read my post on the first mining. I am an asshole. Like, past me was really dickish in that forum post. Anyway, continue.
I absolutely agree with that. I'm not necessarily. I'm kind of listing these as things that I think are causes, but not that I can't understand the reasoning for it. Like I think some people who are most angry and most conspiratorial will love this game the most. There are people who listen to this very podcast who are that way, and like I understand that. But yeah, I think it's just healthy to take a look back at how you're acting and as to whether or not you can.
May I interject
that?
If you just, this is a completely unrelated, just I want to get this in here as a kind of a game design note. There's a game called The Magic Circle. If you want to see what development hell does to a game because of passion, play or watch somebody play The Magic Circle. It just as a little bonus, if you like Dr. Venture, he's one of the main voice actors in that game. It's a fantastic indie game, and it really, really kind of shows what too much love and passion can actually, how it can actually destroy a game. But yeah, just wanted to interject that there while we're on that topic.
Yeah, I've never heard of that game.
It's awesome. Yeah, go watch it or play it if you haven't. Fantastic.
Yeah.
It was Circle of what?
The Magic Circle.
Magic Circle. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate the point. Like, if Jagex wanted Yes to win, they would not have pulled this. They do not have to pull things. They could just release updates. That is totally something they can do. If they didn't want player feedback, they would not be asking us. And I just ask that people keep that in mind. Like, we are not, we as a community do not hold a gun to their head and say run polls. Like, Jagex themselves decided to run polls.
Yeah.
And another part of why I think people are angry, unbalanced updates. I think the past 2 years have had a lot of them. I think it started with Invention. I think Shattered Worlds is another example of an unbalanced update that sat in the game for almost 6 months. People really loved Shattered Worlds until they realized it was super hard to actually earn the anima you needed. It was a very popular update, and Mod Shawnee and I think Jagex themselves have admitted that they made a mistake here. They apparently wanted to hold off rebalancing Shattered Worlds until they could add other improvements, and I think that really hurt that minigame. I think Shattered Worlds stood a chance to be a popular minigame, and I don't know if it is today because it sat so long with terrible anima rates, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Invention, luckily they fixed Invention in 2 days, but it's important to remember that Invention was completely fucking unbalanced when it came out. Like 100%. It was terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly took advantage of the chaos.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it actually wasn't, it wasn't terrible in the moment, but once you realize that it was exactly the opposite of how they wanted the skill to work, that's what made it terrible.
Well, yeah, wasn't it magic longbows or something like that? I was disassembling them.
It was just disassembly. Yeah. Like that was the
that was the whole disassembling magic longbows was the meta.
And I was like, I could get into this, like, because it was just
or magic shield bows. Shield bows. This is RS3. They're magic shield bows.
Yeah, I always forget. I'm still not used to that.
It didn't even faze me when you said longbows because
now that we're talking about that,
well,
can we just bring longbows back? Like it's important, Jagex. Jesus.
But it's like they have to retcon the fact that two-handed weapon. How are you going to get a shield for range when there's no other? Yeah. Oh, it's always good. It's always good stuff.
Well, I still call Constitution, hit points or hit.
Yeah.
Oh, I think everyone does that. God, what is Constitution? Jeez.
Doesn't roll off the tongue at all.
Yeah.
Why are we 100? Nice round number.
Oh, remember what happened when we put it to 200? Community lost their mind.
Yeah. And I think another issue that people are so angry is unfinished updates. And there's probably more examples than this, but the biggest example I could think of is actually changing as of today's BTS, but that's Invention. We were promised multiple batches of Invention. 2016 was going to be the year of Invention updates, and that turned out to be jack shit. We've never got any more skill tech trees, things like that. We never got Invention Backs 2. The Invention Guild is completely useless. Luckily, they are fixing this. But I think if Jagex wants to know part of the reason why the community is so mad when you suggest a poll where you're going to release the high-level part first and then down the road release the low-level part, it's because we don't have faith in you actually doing that. And we don't have faith in you doing that because you have a terrible track record of doing that. Just to hopefully talk straight to any J-Mods who might be listening to this. Like, we as a community, and I am in this boat. A lot of this stuff I did not fall prey to, but this one I am definitely Like, this is part of why I was mad about the Lions Within update. Part of why I'm doing this podcast is because if Yes were to win this poll, I would expect batch 2 of the Lions Within rework to come in maybe 5 years, if ever.
Yeah, we'd be arguing about it for at least another couple of years.
Yeah, I don't have any faith that that would be addressed in a timely manner at all.
And I think a solution to that would have been to give us an end date. Like, if they had said, we're going to do a high-level rework and get that out by the end of 2017, and then by the end of 2018, we are guaranteed going to finish the rest of the skill, that would have actually given me a little more confidence.
Well,
Wait, why would it have given you confidence?
Yeah,
that,
and I
wanted
to touch upon that purely because Jagex used to give us dates, and then they moved to the "it will push it when it's ready" model because they couldn't meet any of their deadlines ever when they set dates. And so they were like, we're not going to release it, because that was they kept releasing broken content because they had to release it, and add a deadline. So they were like, here it is, it's broken, it's unfinished, sorry.
Well, first of all, I don't think that not setting dates has even helped them at all. Like, clearly, I mean, at least from what I've seen, 2016 and 2017.
No, all I'm trying to say is
unbalanced. But,
yeah.
There's a reason I said a little bit of faith and not complete faith. That's my argument there. Like, they would have to, and I was going to say before you all addressed there, they would have to, of course, follow through with that too. But if they were to set that date and then follow through with it, I would gain a lot of faith in them as a company. But I would have, like, it wouldn't make me completely believe them, but it would have given me like a 5% boost to belief that it was actually going to happen versus, not believing it at all. That's kind of my point there.
I've lost too much faith, but I envy
and I think
you.
Something I forgot to add, in 2017, or we were talking about this earlier, and I'm just going to circle back a little bit. This was promised to be the year of skilling, and it hasn't lived up to that at all. All of the projects, like reworking seeds and shit like that, they've all been put on pause, and it's just frustrating to see that in a game where you could have done something different. I don't know.
It sounds like that they basically put all their eggs into trying to make this first expansion, and in the process they basically kind of fell apart. I don't understand how that happened, but that seems to be the kind of the obvious case, which is I guess why they were like, let's quickly switch back to not doing this. But yeah, I still don't understand how they mismanaged multiple different dev teams that were supposed to be working on different projects.
And I think another reason why people are so angry is, and now I lost my train of thought because my monitor just went half asleep. Let me find it here. The high-level community has been spoiled for a very long time, and one mid-level update made them feel abandoned. I think there is some truth in that statement. I'm sure that's very controversial for me to say, but Menafos was a great update for mid-level players. It was a great update from reworking the desert. It absolutely had terrible fucking quests, and it absolutely had a rep system that had basically no rewards to it. And also there's no new Slayer Master. But I don't think most people do not give Menafos enough credit for how good of a mid-level update it was. Now, you can argue that the skilling methods were copy and pasted from other areas, but that's how mid-level content updates have always been. If Jagex is going to redefine how you train a skill, they do it at the high end, not at the low end. We could argue that should maybe change, but personally, I wasn't surprised that all the skilling methods in Menafos were copy and pasted. Like, that's just par for the course in how they do mid-level
surprised
updates.
I think
yeah. Go ahead.
the problem for me, and I did a lot of Menafos on my Iron Man, and the problem for me was that I spent so little time, and will spend so little time even caring about Menafos, because the difference between like skilling from 65 to 75, obviously the gap between Menafos and Prif, and I think everyone here can pretty much agree that Prif is just like, now you could argue it's overpowered and shouldn't have been so good, but Prif is just like, blows Menafos out of the water in terms of utility and usefulness and as a hub for skilling. And going from Menafos level to Prif level take me on an Iron Man that took me maybe 10 days. And so that's kind of the problem, is like, releasing a mid-level update is kind of weird, given that you're spending so little time there, and you might as well just go for Priff. And I think that people would have preferred that development time go to something different, just because there's no scenario where Menafos could have been even close to Priff in terms of usefulness. And it's just not. I don't know. It's just level 75 in skills in 2017 just doesn't take that long. I mean, there's some quests, but for most people, I think people like quests. I think they enjoy them. So
I'm a quester all through, but I was disappointed in the quests.
Oh, I meant the Menafos quest. The Menafos quests are obviously trash, but I just mean just generally, like in terms of Priff being locked behind quests. I think people generally enjoyed the Elf series.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is like the other barrier Priff has, other than 75 and all the skills, is some quests. But I think people typically enjoy that, and it takes almost no time to get to level 75, even without Menafos.
Most of Priff you cannot access until you have 90 plus in skills, though. Like there's quite like most of the actual skill training methods in Priff are not useful to you when you first enter the city. It's actually the exact same way in Menafos. Like Menafos is designed for you to enter at like level 40 I believe is what they kind of said it was aimed at. So you're supposed to enter Menafos before you can actually use most of it, and then make that your hub city, and slowly over time get uses out of the things that are there as you get your levels up. And Priff is the exact same way, where a lot of the stuff there is super high level requirements that you won't have unlocked just because you've unlocked Priff. So I kind of disagree with you a little bit there. And as far as it taking not that long to get to Priff, I mean, yeah, that's fair, but also you play a lot. And I think that there's, like, Jagus has said that the average player has level 70 in skills. So I think there's a lot of people who just don't play a lot. And therefore,
well, yeah, I also, that number is so weird to me. They've never really explained what accounts they're taking into, it's like sometimes, for example, someone might have, even if they only did members, like there are people who have 5, 6, 7 alts who are all level 3 that they just use for storing items, merching, things like that.
That's not enough people to matter. That's not enough people to statistically matter.
Well, okay, but also who are they taking into account? Like, if an account hasn't been logged in 2 years and has 40s in all skills, are they part of that number?
They said active players. Like,
okay, so is logging in once a month active? Like,
absolutely.
Is it once?
100% active. I mean, I don't know if that's the metric.
If you play an hour a month, and your account is level 40, like I don't know, that seems silly to even count that as active.
No, it doesn't. I don't agree. I think that's an elitist attitude to have. I think those people,
if they have an active membership, or even if they're, I guess, free to play, but I would count them more so.
Well, that's the other thing is did they count free to play? Because free to play training skills is a whole different ball game. It's not even. The same.
I also don't think there's enough free to play players that they're gonna throw off the statistics that hard. Like free to play is maybe 10% of the community, if even. Like, it's not that big of a. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I don't see how free to play is that popular.
That information.
Yeah, I have no idea. I just wish I could see a breakdown of what factors went in to count as being part of this level 70.
I mean, I don't think we're ever going to find that out because they don't want to give us
trade secrets.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't want to tell us too much about that type of stuff because of trade secrets and potentially
it could hurt their investments and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it could. Yeah. But I see. To me, all those arguments I've heard people make them before, and I think they're statistical anomalies. They're not actually going to hurt the statistic that much, even if people like the amount of people who have even one alt is less than 1% of the player base. Most people do not make alts. Like, it's just not a thing that most people do.
But that's true.
And I also think, like, as far as active players go, RuneScape 3 is an old game. I imagine there are a lot of people who only log in a couple hours a month. Like, it's actually, I've made this argument before that we actually can't tell the size difference of communities between, like, old school RuneScape and RuneScape 3, because old school RuneScape is going to have players who are active more often, whereas RuneScape 3 probably has a lot more players who only log in on update days and stuff like that, or only log in for a couple of hours a week, or like I said, players skew older, so therefore they have kids or they have grandkids and things like that. Anyways.
I would echo what you're saying, Hannah. I mean, I don't have an alt. I only have my main, and that's all I'm interested in.
To be fair, I don't think this is either having a major impact on the amount of accounts created, but of course, when the Iron accounts came into the game, I think that probably spiked alts more than anything, because, I mean, even I created an alt to try that.
But even that, like you said, it's probably like 5% of the community, maybe, who have Iron Man. It's not going to be a ton of people.
And unfortunately, our data will never be accurate. We can only speculate.
Yes. A lot of this is definitely speculation, but it's speculation, I think, based in like sound logic is kind of how I would put it.
Sure. I don't think we're pulling like Alex Jones levels of information here or anything. No.
Yeah, this isn't InfoWars. But yeah, so I really think that a big part of why the community is frustrated is the high level community, who is the most vocal part of the community, is just not used to not getting updates. I honestly think that's part of why Jagex it moved away from expansion model. They moved away from that because they saw how much it hurt their player base, and they realized they need to release a big update every month. Otherwise, people are going to be pissed off, and it's because we are just used to that as a community.
Yeah, if you produce a quality work at a certain level for X amount of time, your audience is going to come to expect that. That's why you never do your best at work. Just hands down. Always give mediocre work unless you expect to do that on a regular basis.
Oh, so now we know why Jagex is doing bad updates. They want us to just get used to mediocre work.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly what Yes was, wasn't it? That whole Yes option was basically to get them out of doing... I know it's not really, but like that's the conspiracy theory, is they want to be lazy, right? It's like, okay, I'm done.
And I think the other part of why the community is so angry is the false belief that MTX events have gotten way out of control. And that they take a lot of time away from content. If you look at MTX this year, yes, there have been a lot of MTX that has happened. But all but 2 of them, I think, as far as I know, and the 2 that I can think of are the Elite outfit that we just got in the Spring Fair, were literally reskinned events from previous years. Therefore, there's no way they took a lot of work. It doesn't take a lot of work to release a rep event that you have to, spend 2 hours a day grinding rep to unlock a skilling outfit. They literally just have to make the outfit, make the artwork to put behind that, and then plug that into a system that they built 3 years ago at this point. Like, it's not a lot of work.
I would argue too that like even the new Hunter Elite skilling outfit, I mean, it does have a few like perks to it that they probably had to put some time into, but like all the Elite skill outfits, like the design of them is pretty much the same.
Yeah, that's fair.
The way it's all set up, 3 outfits, all that stuff, and they've already got the model there, so there's not a lot of like, I would say, conceptualizing going on beforehand.
And I also think it's worth saying, like, at least in my opinion, MTX is better off than it ever was before, not worse. Elite outfits, we are getting them in the game all the time. When I joined in 2015, there was an unfinishable event almost every month. An event that you had to play 100 hours within like 40 hours worth of time. So a literally impossible to complete event was happening all the time when I first joined the game. The last unfinishable event, I can't even think of it. It's been that long ago. Like, I don't even think we've seen an unfinishable event this year.
Nope.
Jagex has made a huge strides in making MTX more accessible. Of course, MTX is happening more often. And I guess I should say, people who don't realize, MTX is microtransactions. I guess most people probably know that, but just in case you didn't realize what that means. It is happening more often, and the biggest place that it is hitting is XP. So there are people who are frustrated by that, and I understand that frustration. But to me, also, a big part of why I hated a lot of Ultra Hunter events, like Elite outfits or unfinishable events, is there was no way to guarantee that you were going to get what you wanted within time. Whereas every time an XP event happens, no matter how much you spend, it actually seems like a fair event, Whereas like an elite skilling outfit coming out in Treasure Hunter, that never felt fair because it was basically like straight up gambling. And sure, you are still straight up gambling when you buy XP, but because the way XP events work, they turn like every lamp on Treasure Hunter into that special event XP. it makes it way different because it's basically you're almost guaranteed to get a lamp every key with the way Treasure Hunter is designed. So those events could be argued that they're overpowered, but to me they are not as game devastating as stuff like Elite Outfits or Silverhawk Boots or Spring Cleaner, which is finally going to become an item from Invention. Thoughts on that?
Anytime you can put treasure hunter items in game, or at least a way to obtain them eventually in game, I'm happy. Like, I was initially mad to see another Elite Outfit, but at least in like a year or two, it's gonna be in the game via, training hunter or some other way. So, I mean, there's like a light at the end of the tunnel for people like myself. Like, I'm always willing to play the long game here, the long way. That's just how I am. As long as I can see it coming in like 2 years through my own merits, I don't mind the fact that it's right now supporting the development costs of my favorite game. I can get past that, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Alice or David, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I really like to see the. Now I'm losing my train of thought of the breakdown machine. I just forgot what it was called just now. That breaks down drops.
Yeah, I know the disassembler thing.
The one that where you turn it on
spring
for
cleaner.
Spring cleaner. That's the word. Thank you. Just really happy to see that in, because I just know that's been a point of frustration for players who are not lucky enough to roll that chance on Treasure Hunter, and like so many methods are based around that your drops are being cleaned by this machine.
Yeah. That's a very, very good point. Yeah, I'm very happy to see that coming in. I mean, I think giving away Spring Cleaner and Silverhawk Boots for the past 2 Christmases has also been a good thing. Hopefully they keep doing that as well, because I think that's also a good update. So I in the end here, I just think people should really examine what they think about MTX. Like, I know I personally hate microtransactions in general. Like, I really do. I don't like them at all, but I've accepted that this is the world we live in. And I am happy that RuneScape has moved away from unbalanced ones that, like, to me, the biggest offenders in microtransactions are always the ones that are impossibly hard to get and permanently alter gameplay, which is why I'm not as offended by XP, because XP is easy to get and it does not permanently alter gameplay. And also, I think RuneScape is a 16-year-old game. There needs to be easy ways for new players to earn experience. Like, it's just progress in a video game. Old school RuneScape can make fun of us all they want for buyable XP, but believe me, if that game lasts for 20 years, they will be here too, and they'll complain about it, but like if that game survives, there's no way the XP rates won't get exponentially better, or there won't be a way to buy XP, or both. Like, I'm not saying microtransactions are guaranteed to come to that game, but buyable XP or just millions of XP an hour will come to old school RuneScape in time. That's just the march of time in video games and how it works.
I hope we as a species can get past microtransactions, but I'm proud of Jagex for handling them in a more reasonable manner than some other companies that I won't name at the moment. But
and also handling them better than Jagex in the past.
Yeah, they've made a market improvement on themselves, which is always good as well. Good.
Yeah, I just saying, like, I've come to tolerate them very well, and I'm not a major fan of microtransactions that buy XP or gold.
Especially not in tandem with a membership fee.
Yeah. Yep. It always feels a little bit icky.
Yeah.
But
double dipping.
Moving on to the final part here, part 5. What should Jagex do? The first thing I have here is skilling armor. I think it's something we've talked about on the podcast before, but armor for skills, something that boosts skilling, degrades to dust or broken, something that would stack with elite skilling outfits, so you would still get your elite skilling outfits bonus while wearing this. It would be augmentable, so therefore it would work with invention, give people more ways to boost skilling via invention, and also it could be made via smithing, crafting, and fletching, therefore potentially giving those skills another money-making method other than making PvM-based armor. What if they made skilling-based armor?
I would love that. Oh God, would I love that.
How would that work? I love the idea. I just want to know, like, how would that fit into the game?
How would
I
making
think
skilling armor fit into the game?
Yeah, like how would that? Because what would it do exactly? Besides, we have the elite outfit setting.
I mean, you could do stuff like boost the resource gathering for gathering skills, so it would maybe cut logs 5% faster, or it could maybe even just be something that provides like an invisible +10 boost to a skill, something like that. I think there's or a combination of some of those things, and it could possibly do stuff like the elite outfits do, like maybe provide an extra 3 to 5% base XP on top of what the elite skilling outfits would. So it could, Jagex can still keep making those, but these could also be a viable thing. I think, mixing up those three things, and maybe Mage, you have other ideas.
I would pretty much go copy the model that you're currently using that works. Use the idea of the treasure hunter items where they have these perks available, and just use different perks and stop worrying about which one's better, really. Like, because everyone, if you own the microtransaction version of it, you automatically just get all effects previous. Like, so it doesn't matter if the effects are just different. Like, so I have my farming outfit. It's my microtransaction outfit, but there can also be a different farming outfit for, that maybe only just allows you to collect, double herbs or like skip a tick on your, farming or something. Anything that uses like the tick system, I think is a great way to try and utilize like a double tick. Like you get, it literally harvests like 2 herbs at the same time, not produces 2 herbs at the same time, but literally double taps the resource for you, which would take a little bit of game magic in the sense that like the server can't obviously do double ticks at the same time, but it would have to like make the patch kind of, it get complicated, I guess. And this is maybe why they don't try to do things like that, is maybe out of spaghetti code. But that's where I would go with the stuff like that, making skilling faster. I think what is it? There's the crafting catalyst, or any of the catalysts really, that have the option of speeding up, make X interface based items. I would definitely explore that anywhere Make X is available for skilling outfits. Stuff like that though is perks are going to be the way, in my mind, to bring value to those types of outfits and make people actually want to make them and use them.
I think that's well said. The next thing I think JX should do is create a rework team. I think the game is old enough and it deserves it, and the game needs enough of these, that we deserve a team that is specifically just dedicated to reworking old content. This would include skill reworks, area reworks, also, in my opinion, spreading out high-level players into the world, trying to figure out ways they can do that. Maybe even like removing some stuff from Prif, which would probably be controversial, but I think would probably be healthy for the game. A team that is solely focused on keeping older content up to date.
I would love that. I mean, obviously, I'm a fan of reworks. I personally, and I know this is probably very limited opinion and who's going to agree with me here, but I feel like I don't know how much of an echo chamber I'm going to announce to here, but like I would be fine if only Ninja Fixes came out for a whole year and the only thing that they did was rework, graphic reworks, skill reworks, just everything was a rework except for minor quality of life Ninja Fixes, that people are kind of asking.
I would love it. I would love it too. I echo that so hard just because there's so many areas that are just so dilapidated in the game.
Now, yeah, go ahead. I was just like, I would love to hear what someone like David would say, who plays the game mainly for PvM. Would that be a point that you'd quit at or take a hiatus from?
For what specifically, Mage?
If I were to say, if Jagex were to just be like, no updates except for reworks and Ninja Fixes for an entire year. AKA, you're not getting a single new boss, basically. There's no PvM updates unless they're reworks or balances, stuff like that. What would you do?
I don't know. I think there's got to be some balance to release content. Like, I think reworks is good, but that's not how you keep players interested, I don't think, and that's not how you get people to buy Premier Club. So I think, I don't know. It maybe, but I definitely wouldn't buy Premier Club if that's what they were saying.
I think David's opinion is more popular than I would like to admit to.
I mean,
and it doesn't have to be just a bossing based thing. It's just like if there was going to be no new major quests, no new storylines opening up, no new areas being built, that just does not sound fun to me. I'll just come back in a year after it's all been reworked.
And I think that's what Jagex is scared of.
Well, I don't think
Yeah.
the reworks have to avoid PvM specifically. I can think of a few things that I would like to see reworked in PvM too.
For sure,
know?
but the point being is, David, was like, it doesn't have to be a PVM issue, right? It's like, if there's no new content coming, it just could turn off players altogether, or just like see in a year when there's new stuff to try.
Yeah.
If it's revitalized enough, I think it can kind of take the place of new content, though.
I mean, maybe. The problem is that there's got to be a strong incentive to train that skill or to do those activities. It's just like I've been, maxed for kind of a while. If, I'm comped. And so unless there's like some massive incentive to do it, or it's like a totally new mechanic, I'm not really sure why I would bother.
Yeah, I mean, I think partially it would come. I think there's a way they could pull that off. Whereas, like, if like once a month there was something that fundamentally reworked something that therefore made it feel brand new. But I think I like the idea of doing that for a year, but I think probably a more healthy way to do it, because there is a diversity of people who are not going to stay for that, would be to do like 50% reworks for a year, and basically still have once a month have one relatively good size update that is brand new, but also have that put beside a bunch of reworks, have a much bigger focus on it. And I also think like part of why I suggest a rework team is that we would then know that there is at least always one group within Jagex who is working on this, which is personally what I think is needed. A rework year would be amazing, but even if we just had one team and knew that there was always a team that was doing this type of stuff, it would be fantastic.
A dedicated team would be amazing.
Yeah, dedicated team I'm all for, just so there's like an actual roadmap and it's being worked on and we know it's coming. Like we know there are pieces always being worked on, and we don't end up in this scenario again where we have the dirty laundry is, taller than you and starting to fight back.
And then the next thing I think to have to say here is no new areas. The game is big enough. New areas are exciting, but I don't know anybody who goes to the Ark very often anymore. I don't know, when was the last time anybody here was at the Ark?
This year.
This year, but not like this month, like
2 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like not all, everybody but me was excited about the Ark. And it's clearly in a place where it's already, I wouldn't call it dead content, but it's just barely used content. It has usefulness, but that usefulness is literally only in chasing XP. To me, what the game needs is we need to make the areas we currently have useful to everybody. We need to, once again, a big theme of this whole podcast, we need to intermingle high-level players and low-level players. We need to make people move around the world. I don't care if you're using lodestones to move around the world. I just want people to have a reason to go to Sears Village or a reason to go to Ardone. Or
I want a reason to go there too. They're underutilized places, and nice to intermingle, high-level players with low and mid-tier players.
Yeah. And I think we should not see a new area in the game for a really long time. And I think Jagex knows this. I think Mod Osborne said in their stream right after Metaphos came out that they were probably not going to do any new big areas, which is part of why they canceled expansions. And I totally agree that, Metaphos was the last promised city that we hadn't had delivered yet. We're caught up on that. Obviously, the Ark, or not the Ark, the Eastern Lands is kind of a promised thing in the lore of the game. But to me, that can wait a little bit. And I would also like to see the Ark region itself made more useful. I would like to see non-XP reasons to go there. Please make those fish that you can fish there tradable. Like, let us
the
make
closed
money
economy was the death of the Ark.
Yeah. I argued that from day one. I wish they hadn't done it.
I mean, sort of. It's like a dreamland for people who are going for 120s and gathering skills. It's like perfect.
Yeah, but it's a very, very
I don't
small
really know if
niche
that's
community.
But wasn't the point of the Ark to be extremely high level skilling content? Because to me, high level skilling content doesn't really mean 90s. It means like going for 120.
Yeah, but
because I think being a
high level skilling content
is...
shouldn't mean XP. It should mean making money. Like, that's the biggest problem with the Ark. Like, XP drives very few people in this game in comparison to making money, and for some reason, skilling updates are mainly XP focused. which just seems unbalanced.
I just went there for a couple of rewards, like the bone.
The arc. I just think the arc was flawed for that being the point of it. Like I
Yeah.
argued it from day one, the day the closed economy was announced, and people voted for it. I was like, this is gonna suck. Like this is not what skilling needs. But obviously that's what they wanted to make. I just don't agree with making it, especially because there's weird stuff like why did they put fishing there when we already had waterfall fishing? Why did they? There's other skills that are there that make no sense being there because there's already so easy to train methods in the game. But anyways, next thing I have listed here is plan for the future. Don't just put an update in. Don't just give us tier 92 armor in mining and smithing, and then tier 94 2 years from now comes out in PvM. You need an actual plan on how you're going to keep skilling viable after you make it viable. Don't let things get this bad again. Constantly be updating skills.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they learn from their lessons, and I'm not going to say that they've been the best at doing that in the past, but if once this is sorted, like that is going to be very important because it's going to be very easy for, even like a new developer to come in and be like, oh, I'm just going to like add a bunch of these high level resources to this skill, to make this boss bigger and better. And if the entire office doesn't immediately turn around in their chair and give this person the stink eye because of what they went through in the first place because of all that, then that's a problem. Like the second we get lax on this again, we're going to end up right back in the same scenario.
Well, I just kind of look at the state of PvP and what that looks like, and that was neglected for so long.
PvP is another, and like no one talks about it, but PvP is just as neglected. And if it wasn't for the fact that it played a much far less integral role on the kind of central economy of the game, probably why it's not being argued for as much as it was more like an ancillary activity where you kind of similar to like, Duel Arena, you could kind of make it big if you were super lucky or really skilled rather, I guess, or both.
I think
I started out as a PvPer.
Me too. I mean, I loved PvP in RuneScape Classic. Go ahead, Arnea.
PvP is also a great example in the fact that for some reason Jagex thought that one PvP update would fix the whole community. And it's like, no, if you want to fix PvP, it's going to take your constant attention, not just one update. And it's the same thing with skilling. If you want to fix skilling, you can't just put out one update and move on for the next 10 years.
It should be on rotation.
Constant updates. Yes, absolutely.
The problem is with that update is it came along with a bunch of changes to quote-unquote balance PvP. And from the people who are really, really into PvP that I knew before that update, they kind of felt like all they did was lower the skill cap for PvP without providing a real incentive for people to do it. So the people who were really into PvP before the update started liking it a lot less, and the people who they were trying to get on board didn't get on board. And plus, that's another example of releasing an update that wasn't balanced and wasn't thought through. Like, literally, I think a 12-year-old by themselves could figure out how to game the bounty system that they set up within about 5 minutes. And yeah, of course, it got completely gamed, and that kind of ruined it from the beginning and gave it a bad stench, which has been a big problem in 2017 is releasing things that
PvM
feel totally unfinished.
PvM was on like welfare development time at this point. Nobody even wanted to try and fix it. I'm sorry, what did I say? Sorry, PvP.
PvP, yeah. No, that's definitely true. But it's
I think that feeds into my argument of constant updates. You can't just release an update and not expect to have to fix it and or change it.
Yeah, it needs nurturing and love.
They spent 4 straight weeks where the bulk of the patch notes and the bulk of the update was PvP
That's
updates.
true.
So
That's actually
true.
It
was a month solid of different PvP updates and changes to those PvP updates, and all it did was drive away.
Unfortunately, when you're dealing with 5-6 years of destruction of a game mechanic, it's going to take more than a month to fix it, more than likely.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think personally, we don't go into this far because we have more to cover, and I have to go very soon. I think fundamentally reworking the wilderness is something that they should really think about. People always say bring back Revenants, which I think is stupid, but to me, making the wilderness a safe death in 2017 makes perfect sense. Make you have to, as we've talked about extensively on other shows, make it so that when you go into the wilderness, you have to pay a certain amount of gold based on what you are wearing. And if you die, that gold is dropped onto the ground, but you keep all of your items. This would fix stuff like people who skull trick people, all that type of shit would be gone. It would mean that people like Pern would just wear T90 armor into the wilderness. They wouldn't get angry when they get killed because they would actually maybe stand a fighting chance. They might want to learn PvP because they can actually wear best in slot gear, where right now PvP is basically run by clans who are willing to risk high level items because they have 5 friends with them who are going to protect them, so they will never lose their noxious bow or whatever the fuck they're wearing.
That idea. Like, that is such a great I've never heard that opinion, or at least if I have, I forgot it, because that
you forgot it because we had like a 45
I still love that idea.
I love that idea. I totally don't remember that. And
I will say warbands is extremely popular still and provides massive clan wars that people are really, really into. I know many people who their favorite part of the day, and sometimes they only play twice a day, and they log in specifically just to do warbands. So I think that they just need to maybe just follow the warbands model because of what a huge success it was, has been, and continues to be.
Yeah, maybe. But anyways, we're a little bit off, and I want to lead us back here so we can get through this. The next thing we have here is tell the community less, and this kind of comes from a place of where I think, do we hear about updates too soon? We have a lot of promises that aren't kept, and I don't think that's in any way. People think that's nefarious of Jagex, and they lie to us, and they people are like, oh, every RuneFest they just announce the best things ever, and then on purpose they know they can't deliver them. But really, that's just dev cycle. You try to make something.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it is related. I spent like an hour and a half going through every RuneFest that I could find back to like 2013. And it turns out they promise shit they can't deliver all the time. It's just, RuneFest is I've discussed, people need to stop treating RuneFest like it is a release schedule and more of it like a brainstorming session. Yeah. That's all.
And I think Jagex either needs to themselves pitch RuneFest that way.
Yeah, it is their fault. or they need to figure out a way that they know what they're able to deliver. Like, I don't know. Like, if Jagex could get in such a way where they are ahead on updates and know what the next year's roadmap is and know that they're going to get 80% of it out, then you know what's then funny? They can promise that stuff. Go ahead. What's funny is they used to call that segment ideas for the future. Not, here's what's coming out in 2017. They used to be like, here's what might be coming. These are our ideas. This is what we're brainstorming. And that evolved slowly into, or eventually into a couple of years later, into this is what we're doing next year. Here are the big quote-unquote RuneScape reveals. So what used to be ideas for the future turned into RuneScape reveals, and that's where things went sour, I think.
Rebranded, then.
Yeah. Bring it back to ideas for the future.
Yeah. I agree with that. Also, have a plan before you suggest something. I mean, I think a big example of this is bank bidders, which was like...
Wish I followed this life advice.
So unfinished. Like, it was just like... It almost felt like Mod Osborne made it up on the spot when he announced it at RuneFest. Like, there was no plan to implement that. There was no thought at what the community would do. It was just like, hey, bank bidders, it's an idea.
It's the alcohol that's...
I'm pretty sure I had a skit where I had Mod Osborne like hitting the bong when he thought of that idea. Because it just comes out of nowhere. It's like, I was making a joke where Mod Osborne was like hitting the bong at like 11 p.m. at night watching Storage Wars, right? And he's just like, I can put this in the game. I fucking love Storage Wars. Bank bidders, this makes no sense. Yet clearly he had a passion for it, but
yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah, plan out your updates more. Only tell us about stuff that you know more is going to come, or if you want to tell us about ideas, as we said, label it as ideas. Don't make promises that you can't keep, or at least make less of them. Like, if you delivered on 80% of your updates, then it wouldn't be an issue.
Just give us a theme instead. Don't tell us everything. Just be like, this year's update is X themed or whatever. I didn't mean X themed. Yeah. That came out wrong.
I'm okay with the air of mystery, but I also want a little bit of stuff being revealed too.
Yeah.
I mean,
I have an idea. They don't have to release anything but very basic information, and then they feed all of the teasers through, the podcast networks. No hidden agenda here whatsoever.
Perfect idea. Let's move on and not even address how that might be biased at all. And the last thing I say is, and I kind of said this already, but something's changing is okay. But we are beyond something's changing. It's at the point where like the majority of ideas that they suggested at the last RuneFest didn't come out, and it appears like that's a theme for the past few RuneFests. And it's like, like you can look at games like World of Warcraft. There's something famous where in Wrath of the Lich King there was supposed to be a dance studio in the game, and it got ditched. It's literally on the back of the Wrath of the Lich King box. It says dance studio coming into the game, but it never was released. But the difference is the other 99% of the content that Blizzard announced as part of Wrath of the Lich King did come out. So you have to deliver on more content that you're not delivering on, and I think Jagex is on the opposite side of that scale right now.
What what Blizzard should have done is they should have just taken the No Man's Sky approach and put a sticker over that. That way people just wouldn't have seen it. Simple as that. No Man's Sky put a sticker over the multiplayer feature on a lot of their box copies if anyone doesn't get the reference I'm making.
Really?
Yeah, they put stickers because they had already made all the physical boxes. So they just literally put stickers over the part that said like online multiplayer. Sad. Anyway.
And the next part, unless Alice or David, you have something to say.
I don't think so.
Okay. Next part here is a fucking skilling boss. I literally labeled it like that in the notes because that's how frustrated I am with this. This is an idea that's been suggested forever, and it could be done in a cool way. Old school RuneScape has already done something like this, and it's time that we got something like this in RS3. I don't know the mechanics and how they should work because guess what? I'm not a game designer. But you have smart people at your company release skilling bosses.
I was like 2 weeks away from being a unified certified developer. Does that count? Because I got plenty of ideas, Jagex. Friggin' hire me. I'll give you 10 skilling bosses in 1 year. All you have to do is all the hard work.
I just say just do it, and then if it's a massive failure, then I'll shut up about it.
Well, I mean, and this is the thing, is old school RuneScape did it, and it's not a massive failure, right? Like, now is the best time to do it. It's like, the whole like, we don't know how it would work. Yes, you do now. You don't have to copy it perfectly word for word, or take the word perfect out of there, but you don't have to steal the idea from them exactly, but it's okay to borrow, especially when you already own the intellectual property.
Yeah, the games borrow off each other all the time. It's just a thing now, and it's a healthy thing because it's great. Like old school RuneScape puts something out, it sucks. Then RS3 copies it, and it's good, or the opposite way around. Like both. I think both people learn from the other game's mistakes and the other game's triumphs, and that's actually probably the greatest thing about having two MMOs that are both successful is the fact that you can do that and utilize that more.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. And they can flavor it to each game, appropriately.
Yep. And the next thing here is fewer worlds. I mean, I know Jagex argues against this sometimes, but I think it's pretty clear that the population of RuneScape 3 is in such a place, and we've talked about bringing the community together earlier in the show, and I honestly think that the game should have fewer worlds. I don't think it should be an extreme amount, but there's no way we need the amount of worlds we have now. Sure, it would be...
If they take your plan to, like, make the wilderness basically, like, coin-based instead, I'm all for that. But until then, I love having dead worlds so I can safely do farm runs and stuff. I almost died in the wilderness the other day. Someone tried to kill me.
Once.
Twice? This was the second time? Second time.
Do you think part of the fewer worlds thing, though, is also because we have so many instances now, too?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, I think that's why we need fewer worlds.
Instances are good, though.
Yeah, they're not a bad thing.
I agree. They're great. I frequently use them, and I find them wonderful in many ways. I think that contribute to the feeling of isolation.
Yeah. Well,
it's a little funny. I guess maybe it's because so much of my time on this game is doing group bossing, but I almost never feel isolated ever. I don't know. It's like I don't feel isolated when I'm doing hard mode or raids or something.
That's valid.
That's most of what I'm doing.
You're engaged.
So it's a little that part's harder for me to understand just because I don't really experience it. Because I'm either in the max guild or I'm in a boss instance with friends.
Well, yeah, then that's absolutely 100%.
Then I must be a hermit then.
you can hang out with friends while you're skilling as well. Like we're doing that right now. Technically, if you're watching, I'm fire making and doing this podcast with y'all. But
that's the other thing I was gonna say is that I was in a very dedicated, serious skilling clan, like one of those no XP waste type skilling clans that plans out every single little thing for double XP weekend, makes sure that every person in their clan has enough money to train those skills so that like they could get as much clan XP as possible. It's like everything is very, very, very serious for them. They're almost like elitist PvMers except for like skilling. And they like oftentimes are not in the same area or isolated with what they're doing or whatever, but they're constantly hanging out in the clan Discord. So it's like I don't know, I think that's solved a lot of this problem, but I don't know. Maybe that's not a good substitute.
I think that's why instances are okay.
That's kind of what they do.
Like that. That's why. Go ahead.
Being in groups is not the same as finding random people in the world. I think like people all grouped up in 2005 too, but there was also more people on the surface world, and I think there's still that problem. I mean,
yeah, but do you remember how it sounded in 2004? Like you could barely understand anybody.
I think like a big part of this problem is that like if you're a new player or you're a returning player, the world can feel empty. And I am not a person who believes, I'm not someone who's saying I don't see anybody ever. It's just I obviously see way fewer people than are actually playing the game, and way fewer people than I did in the past. And we can argue about that there were more people playing the game in the past, and I'm sure there were, but the numbers aren't actually that bad compared to 8 years ago as people think they are. And the game is still extremely popular. The problem is that people, are spread out over a bunch of worlds. Anyways, final thing, I think we've already said this, but finish updates. Don't promise Invention Batch 2 and then cancel it. I think hopefully you've learned your lesson, because the community would not stop complaining about that update, and if rightly so. He promised that, Invention never felt finished, and the Invention Guild felt like a useless place, and I'm excited to see that finally be done. So September has me excited. I kind of expected Invention Batch 2 to come out in September. I'm glad it is. I think we're back on track of probably a big update every month. But yeah, does anybody have any final statements, final things they think Jagex should do, whatever?
Yeah, my last statement is to echo what you just said. I think my favorite model, the best of both worlds, my by far favorite way for them to do things is for it to be one big, one medium large to large update a month, 3 things that are either ninja fix weeks or patch notes, and maybe a smaller update. And just that model. Like, for example, this month is Guthix Memorial, this month is AOD, this month is Invention Batch 2. I think that system was my favorite by far, because I felt like every couple of weeks I had something new and engaging and exciting to try out. And I feel like that hasn't been true since basically AOD release for this year.
I don't know I've already expressed my feelings pretty intensely as to how I feel about their current release cycle. I think the best thing to do would be to have more spine about, like, where you are. Like, Jagex didn't get to where they were by just, being wishy-washy and floundering. They, I don't know. That's what I would change the most is be a little more confident in your ability to create, because they do make good content. And they have to not let, I think, the vocal minority take advantage of them as much as they let them. And I think they're starting to do that. But I don't know. That's about all I have at the moment.
I just really appreciate how civil everyone was, and especially since we're passionate about the game. I mean, we're talking about it on this podcast, but I just really miss the symbiotic nature between skillers and PvMers, and I really want to see that return and kind of do a healing in that rift that's kind of formed.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. You can find me in game at Hannah Quinn. You can find David in game at Cabrew, I believe, still probably, unless he changed it.
Yeah. It's that. That'll be my RSN for a very long time. So.
I mean, I'll believe
finally found something I liked.
Well, that's good. You can find MageBit in game at MageBit. Shocker. You can find Alice in game at Malice Alice, I believe.
Let me add you, Alice. I don't think I have you added. I have to delete someone. I always have 400 friends, so it's so annoying. I wish we had some more friend slots.
There's an imposter out there that goes by Alice Malice.
Uh-oh.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
A pox on them.
Is this like a Twin Peaks episode or something?
It causes problems in the clan with the people trying to impersonate ranks.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense too. And also impersonate people for like when you're giving out loans or collecting loans.
Hmm.
I actually know someone who I lost a bunch of money to in the arena had something similar to that happen to him, and he got scammed for 40 bill.
Oh.
Yeah.
James, fix your font. Anyways, the next thing, you can send your feedback or any questions you might have. At some point, David and I are going to do a QA show. We have an email address, pvmperspective@gmail.com. So if you want to see a QA show, send us some questions. We'll get to that. You can hit us up on Twitter at PVM Perspective on there. You can also hang out with us on discord.runeweek.com. I don't know what the next episode is going to be. It might be about bossing in some way, but I'm not sure. I still haven't done the group bosses, and I'm about to go on vacation for a week, and I kind of want to have some experience with the group bosses before David and I cover them. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with a different show, but I'm not sure what the topic will be. Thanks all for listening, and have a week.
To cut you off, just one thing I wanted to say is I mentioned on the last podcast we did that if people are interested in learning either group bosses or specifically raids, to ask me about it. And several people have done that, and I've taken a few people like individually to learn Beastmaster. I've only taken Jake so far to Yaka. He was pretty confident, and he got the kill first, I think our first try pretty easily. And but instead of just doing it a bunch of people individually, I don't know what coordination would be like or the best platform to coordinate it. But if people wanted to do like a group raid or a group trip to a boss, so we could all learn it together, I think that'd be really fun and enjoyable to do instead of just taking people individually and going with raid FC or whatever. I think having our own team would be.
We should use our Discord to like try to coordinate that.
I'm gonna make.
I think that'd be.
I'm gonna make a
nice.
bossing channel or some kind of channel after I talk to Mage, because I'm guessing Mage will have a problem with that. And then we can coordinate it in there. So yeah, if you want to join a PvM perspective based bossing group team, just get in on the Discord, and we'll put some discussion in there. I think that's probably the best way to handle it. If that's cool with you, Mage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you have experience but want to get better, or if you feel like you're pretty solid but can use improvements, if you want to learn how to do a specific role at a boss, there's I can confidently say there's pretty much no role that I can't help you with. I mean, there's a chance you're better than me for sure, but I don't know. If that's true, you should definitely come to help out the team.
Yeah, so. If you want to lead as well.
Yeah,
I want to see someone who's better than David at PvM, so come show me that.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe. We'll see.
All right, well, that does it all. Thanks, everybody, and have a week.